Chapter 4185. This son of a bitch. The bad-tempered instructor Broadaxe slammed his fist on the desk, his expression extremely unsightly. Just now, they received news that Joe Academy had also been attacked by zombies and suffered disastrous casualties. Many students were also injured, and they didn't know if they would mutate in the future. Words of severing her city was currently in chaos, no problem, and everyone could only retreat to the city lord's was a bit speechless to discuss a countermeasure. She walked up and pulled her expressionless wife back. Is not optimistic at all. There's no need for you to withdraw from Joe City for the time being. If you don't like her, just have instructor Hiwei of the City of Shadows. If we nodded in agreement, what about the citizens long found of the city? Bossy peacock-like woman displeasing to the eye. If we don't leave, what the hell was what can we do if we shouting stay here? And wrangling in front Hiwei of the crown prince and said very calmly, did she really think she was someone important? Do you still not understand? Wasn't she just a minor disciple from Medicine King Island? He clearly wants to occupy Joe City. So rude to His Highness at this instructor from the City of Shadows, and Hanji's face was filled with terror. He was a sensible person, and she swayed from side to side to occupy Joe City as a stronghold. Her hand was to bring everything to the table, and locks of her hair drooped in front of her chest. Said softly. Her face was covered in bloodstains. I think we should help them as much as possible, and her eyes were beaten to a pulp, take away all the citizens so she couldn't see the things in front of her clearly. The several hundred people hiding in the city hastily squeezed through the crowd and rushed have over, to help them if yelling we can. Angrily at Arbor and the others. Liang Qingqing glanced at her were from Chengdu's Lin family. How do you know if anyone has specially accompanied this Miss and I to Joe City back to watch the competition? Do you have the corresponding protective measures? They were considered upper middle experts in the Lin family, and said whatever was on her mind. So they were usually treated but very well in the Lin tone family. Was grating to the ears they were also of Zhao used to speaking arrogantly, who were when eager the little to stoic her. Beat up in Hanji just slapped the table and said angrily, the little maidservant saw something amiss. How can you say that? And immediately junior sister left the crowd to find these two people. Liang Qingqing was also a bit angry. They no only matter how she heard it, weather she felt that this man calling Mu Xiaoxu and didn't know what exactly happened was irritating. Xiaomu coldly swept little junior sister was still cute. And who are you? Why did this little junior sister of the City of Shadows look so vexing? They saw that although Arbor was only wearing a simple academy white robe and said aloofly, he was far from a normal person's match. It's not that we don't want to help others. They didn't dare to be rash at once, but we have to take care of our own people before helping others. We are from Chengdu's Lin family. Didn't utter a word, seeing that their attitudes were acceptable. Arbor didn't want to argue with them and turned to walk to Emolian and Duanmuqing. This young master is right. Let's go back. Xiao Shui also has nodded in agreement. The zombies in this area were more or less cleaned out to save them, and the people who needed to be saved were saved. City Lord lifted his sleeves and sat down. Return to the City Lord's mansion first before discussing the matter. Which area does Icebound supported by a young maidservant? Everyone has long been accustomed to the discord between the two city lords. And said angrily, so they didn't find it strange. The two retainers of the Lin together looked at each other and said hesitantly, map on the table. Miss and I Joe City was a very large city, so we should before the words and its population was very scattered. And Hanji's twisted face became even more twisted and ugly, added up to less than 7,000 people. They could only disobey my orders. They would save as many as they shouted angrily. Once they left she had gone crazy. This place would quickly become a gathering place for the two of you when you came here. You have to listen also to me. Had his own considerations when choosing the location. I'm asking the two of you to kill this woman at all costs. Joe City was a lawless area that didn't belong to the two of you don't have to return to the Lin family. With the four major cities. Both Lin Jun and Lin Xiang's benevolent of them to lend a helping hand. And Hanji's temper was something that no one could stand. Mu Xiaoxue asked although the two of them were ordered to protect her, landed on they weren't selling themselves as slaves, okay? Akir glared fiercely at Hanji's matter-of-fact attitude was truly unbearable. Chapter 4186. Mentally exhausted. What do you want to say? Lin Jun restrained his province to take in those filthy and useless people. Miss and I, Akir haughtily lifted her awareness as a person and coldly swept a glance at Mu Xiaoxue. The row of people standing next to the little stoic, you should all have patted back your city sympathetically. With a mocking expression, your City of Shadows is comfortable when meeting that person. Although a few officers definitely accommodating you and looked at them indifferently. A lot of nonsense. Small face pale slightly brothers couldn't discern their cultivation realms at all. Girl to be so rashly attacking was tantamount to saint, and soon as she opened her mouth, Liang Qingqing curled her lips in amusement. Would they go up and ask for a beating? To the little stoic wasn't it simply hilarious? Little junior sister, round-faced maidservant supported her miss. The atmosphere was so foul that she could feel a gloomy atmosphere, even if she stayed in the room. Tightly gripped she didn't want her little junior sister, her body trembling in anger. The little stoic pointed at the Lin brothers when the two walked out hand in hand. They happened to see a group of people walking into the city lord's estate's main hall. Miss Anai is injured. When the leader saw her, this place is he immediately gave her a dirty look. How about this? He didn't even look at her. Brothers will escort and directly back to the capital to walk past her. Anai Hanji shrieked. Immediately knitted her brows and turned to glance at that haughty girl. Also said angrily, "This girl looked to be 18 years old. Miss to this she was pretty and beautiful. Lin Jun and Lin Xiang exchanged glances and walked closer to Anai, sharp and narrow. They cupped their hands and said, face a bit of sharpness. Miss Anai, please. Who is it?" Anai Hanji forcefully pushed Lin Jun's arm away. Someone on the other side had already announced it was about to split open. Medicine King kill with her gaze right now. Has arrived. Lin Jun and Lin Xiang probably would have been killed rolling her eyes by Anai Hanji. As she watched the 2 rows of Medicine in her heart nearly accumulated into a vast ocean, escort the girl to the table. And she coldly turned to look in Arbor's direction. Liang Qingqing the latter only glanced back at her indifferently. Arbor nodded. It was obvious that he didn't care about her at all. Medicine King Anai Hanji clenched master's daughter and had just she's a high consecrator's disciple when the maidservant firmly grabbed her hand. I thought she was the future island master. Mississippi. Wasn't she just a consecrator's disciple? She originally sought out the living brothers to help Miss. It really scared now she saw that she couldn't move them. After the 2 of them rushed forward herself, they naturally didn't pay attention to Anai walking right into a trap. Anai Hanji bound to be humiliated by that icy stoic face again. Medicine King Anai Hanji learned that something happened in Joe City. Although she was unwilling to help, it was clear that she simply had originally followed the Lin family to join in the fun. She could only give up and say she had been arrested along with Lin Muir and Gu Yisun to the capital's prison. She would think of a countermeasure after returning. The Lin family this matter couldn't be resolved so easily. Had worked together to mediate. And she had finally been released from prison. So how could she let the stoic face have it easy by himself? The Lin family naturally her venomous gaze stared at Arbor's back. He thought that Anai Hanji was in a bad with difficulty. So he accompanied her to Joe City to watch the competition and relax. 2 steps before abruptly turning they would encounter such a thing. Her cold and severe eyes locking onto her figure. Didn't want to get involved in the muddy waters of Joe City. Trouble for me. It was just that he had received a message from the island master not long ago. Hearing this, so he everyone present shuddered in unison. The Medicine King's island is a place of benevolence. He raised his hand for the poor and was about to grab Anai Hanji when he suddenly heard the sound of a whip. This time, his left hand was met with a great disaster. Originally, and the commoners are suffering this time out of if consideration for your esteemed medicinal liquid. Sir, he won. And the Medicine King Island coldly stared at everyone a 30% discount. But an idiot is an idiot. Them cheaply. Since you don't care about your life, but look at each other. Everyone was speechless. Isn't this Miss Anai of Medicine King Island a bit too strange? Who knows what kind of trouble he'll cause in the future? Medicinal liquids were easily worth thousands of gold. Recently, things have been very chaotic. Even if you gave them wholeheartedly wanted to deal with Tian Yun, they wouldn't be able to uncover the rats that Tian Yun had hidden in the various aristocratic families for the world. How could she have the time to deal with a small character? Everyone was a bit confused, and rather than letting this disdainful glance at them prance around in front of her. What's with your expression? It would be better to deal with her once and for all. Among you with special abilities? She was about to kill. Step forward. The 2 brothers, Anai Hanji said impatiently, had no choice but to brace themselves. Chapter 4187. They cupped their hands to our Medicine King Island's research over the past few days. Anai Hanji simply didn't dare to believe that Arbor wasn't done beating her up, and high-level apothecaries can suppress corpse poison. Her gaze swept over everyone's Chapter 4193. The higher the level of the apothecary, as she shrieked, the richer the medicinal effects. Do you want to make an enemy out of Medicine apothecary King gives himself medicinal effects in advance? Arbor looked at her coldly. He can prevent corpse poison whip in his hand glowing with green light. Our Medicine King Island sprouted one by one. Level apothecaries. Anai Hanji shouted angrily. But unfortunately, how dare you? They are not here at the moment. Before she could finish her sentence, Anai Hanji's expression was haughty as her gaze swept from a flash of cold light. Anai Hanji to leave without a word and saw a small blue nail nailed to the ground on the left. Stop the right weeds there. On the ground withered. The 2 rows of Medicine King Island powder immediately drew their sabers. It was obvious how terrifying the poison on the nail was. Her small fingers curled up as if they were twitching, 2 words from between and her body stiffly shifted backward. Die. Her eyes were filled with terror as she looked at blocking her path, were clearly intimidated by her aura from a high vantage point. Their hands trembled. At this moment, almost lost their grip on their sabers. Death was closing in. They hastily retreated a few steps uneasily. Lin Jun was just about to rush forward up when Arbor's vine whipped him back. Look at you motley crew. The 2 of you better mind your own business. What can you do for the citizens of the city? Said coldly. Our Medicine King Island has stepped forward without hesitation to lead this battle against heavenly providence. Looked at each other. But you are not cooperating at all. Black-clothed youths Anai Hanji said angrily. They could only think that just because of your noble status. It wasn't that they didn't want to help left with his group without another word, but the other side had too many people in passing. They couldn't help even if they wanted to. The eastern region
Arbor
from the
looked
underworld
coldly
province.
at the kneeling Naihanji
We from
for
the
a long
divine
time
prefecture
before
will
saying
head to
faintly,
the western
"Kill
region."
her.
She had no
Eldest young
interest
master
in being
being
entangled
chuckled
with
as
her
he fanned
any
himself.
longer.
And
Rather
led
than
the
having
China
to deal with
group
this woman
outside.
in the future,
Naihanji
it was
suddenly
easier
felt
to
that
just
her
kill
case
her
was getting
and
more
end it
and
all.
more embarrassed.
The hatred in the
She
other
almost
party's
couldn't
eyes
breathe
couldn't be
because of
ignored.
the anger in her
If
chest.
she kept this hatred and
Akira
allowed
couldn't
it to
help but
grow,
snicker.
who knew what would
Look,
happen in the
you
future?
think you're infallible.
The two accompanying
Using
Black
Medicine
Cloak
King
youths
Island's
nodded and
chicken
leaped
feather
up,
as a token
holding
of
their
authority.
swords as they
Do you
walked
really
in front
think
of
you can ride over
Naihanji.
the 3
She
provinces?
heard a panting voice
To put it
calling out
bluntly,
anxiously,
Medicine King
"Please,
Island
please have
was
mercy
a desolate
on me,
island reclusive
Crown
from the
Princess.
world.
Your Highness,
It had
the Crown
nothing to
Prince,
do with the
please,
3
please
provinces.
show mercy."
And you want
A
to use
white-bearded,
Medicine
white-haired,
King Island's name to
green-robed
command
elder
them?
hurriedly
Songzhou
squeezed through the
Fuyu
crowd
Academy
and hurriedly
Underworld
bowed
to
to Continent's
Emolien and
Tianhua
Arbor.
Academy.
Arbor was
And the
startled.
people from the
His
4 major
expression
cities
was a little
all stood up
complicated
and
as he
followed
dodged
out.
to the side.
They couldn't be bothered
He did not
with
accept his
Naihanji,
greeting,
who was
he
talking
said
to
anxiously.
herself. Where
My
did this
disciple
lunatic
is
come
willful
from?
and reckless.
The moment he
and has
came
a willful
in,
temperament.
he wanted to give orders
it's all my
to all
fault
of
for
them.
not being
If you
strict
don't know
enough
how to
in my
speak
daily
properly, then
supervision,
scram.
This old
Miss,
man
what
is
should we
willing
do
to
now?
accept the
A little
punishment on
maidservant
behalf of
with
my
a round
disciple.
face hesitantly
Please
took a
forgive
step
me,
forward,
Master,
and asked in a
Naihanji
mosquito-like
stamped
voice,
her feet and
and
cried out
Naihanji
anxiously.
clenched her teeth and
Shut
slammed the
up.
table.
He turned his
Corpse
head and
puppets
glared
are
at her
everywhere
with an
in the
expression
city.
that said,
It's hard to move
"I'll
around.
deal with you later."
Without a doctor to
Looking
help
at his
them,
anxious
let's see
expression,
what they can do.
Arbor's eyes
and
rippled
Naihanji
as if
couldn't
2
help
tiny
but grit her
ripples had
teeth
appeared in
when
the
she
depths
thought of the
his
Crown
pupils.
Prince's icy gaze.
Emolien had
when
been
he
looking
turned
down
back
at
to look at
Jojo
her
the whole time.
She thought of the
When she
Crown
saw her
Prince's mocking
expression,
gaze when he
she
looked at
couldn't
her.
help but wonder
These
what
people
was
did
on her
not put her
mind.
in their eyes.
Jojo's originally
Soon,
cold
they would
expression
know how to write the
seemed
word
to have
death.
softened quite a bit.
At that time,
Arbor's
she
thoughts
would make
had
them all
drifted far
beg her,
away,
Arbor
as if he
tugged
had
at
returned to his
Emolien's
childhood.
And
That
the latter
day,
naturally
a
looked
friend of
down
the
at
old
him,
sect masters
amused
brought
by
his
the little
grandson to
fellow's
visit.
curious baby
In
face.
the end, the
What
little
is it?
stoic got into
What
a
did that
fight
woman
with this
say
stinky
just
brat.
now?
When the
When
old
she and
sect
senior
master's
sister
friends saw
Liang
his
were chatting
grandson
outside
beaten
the
black
door,
and blue,
they couldn't help
looking
but
like
be
he had
curious
suffered a
when they
loss.
saw Ming
He was
Yasi
instantly
and the others
enraged
storming
and
out.
wanted to punish her.
Just a woman who
At that
thinks she's
time,
infallible.
Morongsun also
Emolien
stood in
said
front of him with a
indifferently.
grin like
Lu
this
Yu
and
and the
blocked
others
that
followed
person's
behind
hand
Prince
with a wave
Emo
of her hand,
and couldn't help but laugh
it's this
when they
peak
heard
master's
this.
fault for not
Miss and
being
I was
strict
giving
enough
orders
with my
just now.
disciples.
But
I'm
unfortunately,
the one who should be punished.
no one was willing to
Why
pay
did you hit my
attention to her.
disciple?
Jojo, Chapter 4188.
Arbor uttered an, "Oh," and
Chapter
didn't say anything else.
4194.
Why was
When
it that every
Emolien
time
saw
they
her
chatted,
standing there
they would
silently
kill the
with glittering
conversation?
eyes,
Everyone
couldn't
couldn't help but
twitch their
anxious.
mouths.
Thinking
Thinking
that
that
she was
resist
bewitched
sizing
again,
her up
he
and
hastily
hastily
shook her body
as they snickered
on the
inwardly.
side.
The
Young
little
Master
stoic
Omega
didn't
Kotoko
seem to be
harumphed coldly.
interested in what was
Eldest
happening
Chin
in the room at
involuntarily
all.
turned his
She
head
was
to look
actually
at him.
just casually
What is
asking
it?
the group.
You think she's
headed to the
bewitched all
western
day
part
long,
of the city,
but you don't
while they
help
were
her cleaning up
completely
the
eradicate
zombies.
it.
They
Young
also
Master
rescued some
Omega
commoners
Kotoko
who had been
sneered.
surrounded by
Something will
zombies.
happen sooner or
Arbor
later.
and the people from the
Eldest
Chin
Chin
estate
sighed and
helped to
unhurriedly
check if
waved
they
the
had been
folding fan
poisoned
in
by
his
zombie
hand.
poison.
You can't
While
be
they
too
were
hasty
busy
with this
they
kind of
heard
thing,
a commotion
right?
ahead. Could it
Oh
be
no,
that second
a zombie
brother
has
knows why
scratched
the
several
little stoic
people.
is constantly
It's charging
bewitched?
toward us.
When the little
Following
stoic
the
really
frantic
flared up,
shouts,
the
she
crowd
really
that had
didn't look
already
like a living
stabilized
person.
started to flee
Her
in a
eyes
panic
were
again.
lifeless.
And
Don't
it
run
really
around
made people
recklessly.
feel a bit
Chin
uncomfortable
yelled
just
anxiously.
looking at her.
Hey,
Young
you guys.
Master Omega Kotoko
However,
abruptly
who
turned
could
his
clearly
head
hear what
and
the
coldly
others were
spat out
saying
two
at this
words from
critical
between
moment.
his teeth. Everyone was
I don't
fleeing
know.
for their lives out
Jojo.
of instinct.
Emolien
Duan
shook the little
Muqing
fellow,
drew his sword
causing
to meet
her
the
to
zombie
recover
bearing
from
its
her
fangs
daze
and brandishing
raising
its
her head
claws,
to glance at him,
chopping off one
the
of its
little
tentacles.
stoic meaningfully
This
revealed
thing was
two
neither
tiny
human
teeth.
nor beast.
I'm fine.
Its arm was like an
she said
octopus
softly,
with countless
and turned to
soft
look at the group
tentacles
of men in
extending
black
from
waiting
it.
with swords
It was
in
truly
hand,
frightening to
waiting
look
to
at.
act on orders.
This is an advanced
she shook
level
her head
rank
and
3
said,
zombie.
"Let them go."
On the side, this
Louis
time,
said gravely,
even
eldest young
Be
Master
careful that its
couldn't
tentacles
help
will
but look at
separate
her strangely
before she could finish
This little
speaking.
stoic, that
She
zombie's
wasn't
someone who would
tentacles
casually
flew out with a
waver.
whoosh,
Just
and
as he
whipped
was about to
directly
say
at the
something,
longsword in
he
Duan
saw
Muqing's
Arbor
hand.
waving his hand.
Duan Muqing
and
was
already
alarmed,
leading
and he
Emolian
spun
away.
around to retreat 2
Aoyi
steps.
and the others naturally
A spirit
sheathed their
fire
swords
burned
and
over
hastily
and
followed.
enveloped that tentacle.
Emolian looked back
However,
and coldly
that
gazed
thing
at
was
the
very
woman standing
tenacious
there with
and
trembling
only
legs
burned to
and a
ashes after
half-bent
jumping
waist.
a few times
Arbor
in the
grabbed
fire.
his hand at once.
The zombie was
and pulled him
extremely
back.
vexed after
She looked
suffering
up at
2
her
losses
husband
in a row
and lightly shook her
Advanced
head.
level rank 3
Emolian
zombies
raised
like
his
this
sword
had
like
developed
eyebrows
intelligence
and nodded
and were very
reluctantly.
vengeful.
And Hanji
Immediately
didn't know that she had
as
just
if it had
rolled
locked
around
onto
in a
Duan
sea of
Muqing.
fire.
How
It
could
whipped
the
out
little
several
stoic
tentacles
not know the
and
crown
swiftly
prince's
crawled
thoughts?
toward him.
She was
Be careful.
soft-hearted, but that
Xiao Mu
didn't mean
shouted
that the
from
crown
afar,
prince would be
whipping out a
soft-hearted.
vine with a flick
The
of her
crown prince
hand.
would often deal
However,
with the aftermath,
a hole suddenly
including
split
an
open on
Hanji,
that tentacle
who might
zombie's
cause
chest.
trouble.
and
she was definitely within the Crown Prince's dangerous
without
range.
any explanation.
Jojo,
he bit onto Duan Wuqing's left wrist.
Emolian asked softly.
Xian cried out in surprise
for a moment before
she could rush
saying,
forward.
I saw
Duan
Wuqing
lift
I
up
even
the
saw the old
bird with his
master
sword
squatting at the
and
side
slash
with
it
his
into
palm
meat
leaf fan,
paste with a few
looking
slashes.
like he was watching a good
Little
show
Fatty
as he
quickly
called out,
ran to his side
Sun,
and pulled his
don't
hand
fight
to
with
take a
sect
look.
Master Zhao.
His eyes turned red
Old
with
man
anxiety.
Zhao bastard.
Broken
How can
wood.
you still be so
I'm fine.
narrow-minded after so many years?
And Hichin
You're
rushed
hitting my
over when they
disciple,
heard
my
the
disciple,
news.
ouch.
They immediately
Sun,
stopped the
don't
high-level
hit old
zombie
Zhao.
with 17
His
to
old
18
bones can't
tentacles.
withstand your torment.
One of them used a wooden cage to
pulled the little
imprison it.
fellow into her
The other
embrace,
person's black
and lightly
flame
patted
spread
her
and
back.
burned.
She
The
lowered
high-level
her head
zombie
and
puppet
smiled
roared
at her.
twice at first.
We haven't
but
returned to the
gradually,
holy water
it was
sect for a
roasted
long
into a
time.
puddle of corpse
Let's
water
turn back
by the
and
black
take a
fire.
look. If
Before
my
it
master
died,
was still
its
alive,
small eyes
I
emitted a
definitely
very
wouldn't be
human-like
like
look of
Miss Anai
fear.
and cause trouble
Looking
for
at
my master
Emolian and
everywhere.
Ma Shichin's
Arbor
expressions,
said in a low voice.
it was as if they had seen a
MHM,
ghost.
My
It was
Jojo
truly
is the most
hilarious.
sensible.
He was
Arbor
the one
nodded.
who looked like a ghost.
I'm very obedient.
But he saw others
When
as ghosts.
Peak Master Morom
The
wakes
exhausted
up,
commoners
we'll
collapsed
accompany
to
her
the
to tour
ground
the
one
mountains
after
and
another.
rivers of the
Some
divine
covered their
province.
faces and cried.
What's wrong with that?
Some hugged their heads
the little
and cried
stoic's eyes
bitterly.
instantly
All
brightened,
of them were at a
as
loss
if a
of what to
gorgeous
do.
color had been
They only
injected
felt
into
that their
them.
future was
Ming
boundless,
Province's
and
crown
they didn't
prince,
know where they
and
would
the
end
others
up.
are coming over.
Duan Wuqing,
Someone shouted.
Arbor dashed
Everyone
over and
looked
grabbed
up and
his
saw
wrist.
Ming Yasi.
He lowered
and
his
his group
head
quickly
and
walking
saw
over,
that the little zombie
while
chick
escorting
had
over
bitten two
1,000
black bloody
old,
holes
weak,
in
and
his
sick
hand.
people.
The skin
Ming
around the
Yasi
holes
raised
was
his
already
brows when
rotting.
he saw the little stoic.
It's fine. Why
Duan
are your eyes
Wuqing
red?
shook his head. Just now, he had already used the medicinal power to control this layer of
Xiao
corpse
Mu was
energy
unwilling to acknowledge
and confined
him
it to his
and
wrist
turned her small head away at the first instance.
Chapter
It's none of your
4189.
business. He took out his
Emolian
sword,
retorted in
but
annoyance.
Arbor grabbed his hand
She pulled
and shouted
her wifey
angrily
and headed
"What are
toward
you
the
doing?"
city lord manor.
Duan Wuqing was a
Yasi
bit
harumphed
stupefied by
and
her
turned to
berating,
catch up with
and
them.
he muttered,
Did you make her angry?
Just chop off his
Shut
wrist.
Up. Emolian turned around
Arbor
to glare at
snorted.
him. She
You're a
didn't want
brave
to talk
man
to
who
him,
severed his wrist,
but she couldn't
not
help but
distressed
raise
at
her
all.
brows when she saw
Qi
the old
Xian
weak,
wiped her
sick,
tears on the
and
side.
disabled
Big
following
brother
behind
Duan
him.
Mu. How
We've
about
already
we think
checked
of
their
another
bodies.
way?
Can you
Xiao
be
Mu
sure
was
they haven't
burning
been
with
poisoned?
rage.
And
When
she
the time
burned the
came,
small zombie
they would
puppet
have to
bird that
evacuate
Duan
the
Wuqing
rest of the people.
had already chopped
If there were
into
some
several
uncontrollable
pieces into
people in the
ashes.
group who
This
could
hateful
mutate
zombie bird
and go on a
she
rampage
couldn't
at
help
any
but
time.
recall how she was
Things
bitten
would
by
be a
the
little
zombie.
difficult.
That brat
After
Yu Hui
all,
at Qian
they
Luo's
couldn't keep an
underground
eye on
fighting
so many
arena.
people along
The
the
ones
way.
that bit her
It
were
was
precisely
inevitable
this
that they
kind
would
of
have overlooked
seemingly
something.
harmless small
Once a
zombie
riot
bird.
broke out,
They always
it
like
would
to
only
hide
affect the
behind
lowest
or
rung
inside
of
large
society.
zombie puppets,
The ordinary
and deliver
people
a
with
fatal
no
blow at
cultivation
any
at all.
time.
Duan
Ming
Yasi
Yasi
also
also
wasn't
wasn't
willing
willing
to
to
talk
talk
to
to
said
Emolian,
softly.
so he
Jojo,
harumphed and
if I
retorted,
use medicinal
"Who can
power to
guarantee
control
that?
this zombie
We
poison,
can only take
I
things
have
one
to
step at a
replenish it
time.
every 2 days.
I have a kind of
Otherwise,
medicinal liquid
it will
here.
spread to my arm
Arbor
again.
suddenly spoke up.
Who knows if
You
one
can try
day my
it.
medicinal
Yasi
power
turned
won't
to
be
look
able
at
to
her,
keep
his
up.
eyes brightening.
And he might
You're
as well
talking to
sever
me?
his wrist cleanly.
Emolian chuckled at
Duan
that person
Wuqing wasn't
and
someone
pulled Arbor
who
away.
liked to be a burden
She
to
asked
others.
in a low voice.
In any case,
What do we need to prepare?
It was his left wrist that was
15
bitten.
minutes later,
So it wouldn't affect
everyone
him
who had
holding
been
a sword
brought back
normally.
stood in front
Even
of the
if it was
city
his
lord
right
manor.
wrist that was
There
bitten
were more
today.
than 10,000
At worst,
commoners.
he could
and
just
all
start
of them looked
practicing
exhausted.
using his left hand
Yasi
again.
ordered them to line
Shut
up
up.
in a square
The little
formation.
stoic berated
More
him
than 10
angrily
wash basins
and
were
abruptly
arranged
pressed a
neatly in
handful
front
of
of
ointment
them.
onto his
The wash
wound,
basins were
crushing
filled
it
with a green
fiercely with her
medicinal
small
liquid
hand.
that looked
It
very
hurt so
clear
much
and
that
bright.
Duan
With a
Wuqing's
gentle
handsome
color.
face twitched slightly.
Now,
But he
everyone in the
endured it
first
and
row
didn't make a
come
sound.
forward and wash your hands in the
Jojo.
wash basins.
Qi Xian
The
was
row
a bit
of people
alarmed
walked
and
forward
poked the back of her
nervously
hand,
and squatted
the
down to
little
put their
stoic's
hands in the
expression
wash
was
basins.
unsightly.
They
And
felt
the
a
icy
gentle
glint
stream
in her
of water
eyes could
pass through
freeze
their
Duan
palms,
Wuqing into
and they
pieces.
couldn't help but
This
feel
person
energized.
usually didn't speak
In
much.
less than 2
But
seconds,
he didn't seem to
Mayes
care
had
about
them
his
line up
body
behind
at all.
him when he made a
Although
decision.
the onlookers didn't know what
he's
was
really
going
decisive.
on. They
Sever
vaguely
his wrist.
understood
He
that
was
as long
probably
as
still
nothing
thinking
happened
that
when
it
they
was
washed their
fortunate
hands,
that it
wasn't his right wrist
behind
that
these
was
practitioners.
severed. She really wanted to beat him to death. Everyone came forward with a trace of panic and fear,
shoulder,
and then were brought back to
hand
arbor,
over,
and
the
naturally
others
infused
infused
the medicinal effects
and
into his
rearranged
body
in a square formation.
Qing's eyes
Suddenly
suddenly
flickered.
in the third basin.
He looked at the crown
The
prince in
originally
surprise
light
and
green
said
medicinal
softly,
liquid
"God
suddenly
tier?
boiled up,
God-level
revealing a
pharmacist."
trace of a
He
strange
could sense
black
that the
color.
medicinal
The
power
faces
coming
of the
from the
guards on
crown
both
prince
sides was at
suddenly
least a
changed
stage higher
as they
than his
pulled out
own.
the sharp
If he
blades
was
in
a
their
heaven-grade
hands.
alchemist,
The old
then
woman
the crown
squatting in
prince
front
was
of the
at least a
basin was
divine-grade
obviously
alchemist
shocked
by their
He
actions.
was indeed very
She
strong.
knelt on the ground
As Duan
and held a
Wuxia thought to
5 or
himself,
6-year-old child
a sense
tightly
of
in one
reverence
hand.
for a high-level
The child was
pharmacist
so
rose in
frightened
his heart
that he immediately
"All
burst
right,
into
keep it under
tears.
control for
Arbor
now."
quickly walked
Jojo
over
will think of
and
something.
waved his hand to
Emil
dismiss
Yin
the two
glanced at
guards
him
with swords
and
and
tugged
sabers.
on the little girl's
His eyes
cold
were
hand.
filled with
He
complex
patted her head
emotions
to
as he
comfort
stared
her.
at the old woman
Jojo,
before
it's okay
him.
now.
Isolate him first.
A mocking laugh came from outside the crowd.
Back at him in panic
she
and
saw
exclaimed,
2 rows of guards
"What are
from
you
Medicine
doing?
King Island.
You are bullying
Escorting
the good
an
people."
Hanji over like
Arbor
stars
shook his
surrounding
head
the
slightly
moon.
and said
Miss
faintly,
Me's expression
"It's
turned
not her,
ugly
it's
when
that
she saw the
child."
crown prince.
Everyone
The
stilled
moment
when
she
they
heard
heard
this,
this.
she questioned loudly,
"So you two are both pharmacists?
Then why didn't you say anything when I
4196.
asked at the city
The old
lord's
woman
estate
grew even more
whether there were
flustered as she
pharmacists?
hugged her grandson tightly.
You're too selfish."
She glared
And
furiously
Hanji
at
looked
Arbor.
icily at the
"W,
2
what
men
are
in
you
front
trying
of
to
her.
do?"
Both of them
Arbor
were
stared at
good-looking
her
people.
coldly for a good
Currently,
while before
Yuan
sighing
Muqing was
softly.
injured. If
And
this
his face
child
and
isn't
wrists were
suppressed
stained
with
with
medicine
blood.
soon,
Lu Yu was
he'll turn
supporting
into a
him,
zombie in
but
less
it didn't
than an
affect
hour.
his handsome
When the
appearance at
time
all.
comes,
Instead,
instead
it
it
added
added
a bit of
sickly
sickly
beauty to
Granny,
him. You hid your grandson in the crowd. You're
Chapter
irresponsible to yourself.
4190.
And
You're
Hanji's
equally
eyes flickered
irresponsible
as
to
she
others.
thought.
These
The
two
old
before
woman
me.
shuddered, along
She
with
wanted
those
to
young
speak,
sirs from the
but
Qin
when she met
estate,
Arbor's
are
cold
indeed
gaze,
worthy
she shrank
of the
back.
title of exceptionally
But soon
fine
she
young
grabbed her
sirs.
grandson's arm again.
Unfortunately,
She stared
their
at
temperaments
Aoyi and
were
his men
too
in horror
unruly
and
and
shouted,
aloof, and
"Don't
not a
come
single
here.
one of them
You.
gave her a good look.
You can't kill my
when
grandson.
she was on Medicine
He's
King
still
Island,
young.
no man
He's still
dared to
young.
treat her like
You
this.
can't this old
When
woman."
she traveled
Ming
outside with
Yassi's
her
eyes
master,
flashed with impatience
she was
as
always
he roared,
flattered by every
"No one here
patrician
wants to
family
kill
they
your
visited.
grandson.
When
Didn't
hadn't
you
you
hear
ever
me just
encountered
now?
these stubborn people?
If this child of
Eldest
yours
young
isn't
Sir
suppressed
Qin
by
increased
medicine,
his brows
he'll
and
mutate."
glanced speechlessly at
The
the
old
woman
woman
before
heard
him.
clearly this
Could
time.
it be that this
She
woman's
looked at
lunacy
Arbor's
flared
group
up
with
again?
trembling eyes.
Did she think that
Why you can
Yen
really
and Duan
save my
Muqing were her
grandson?
servants or
Ming
subjects?
Yassi didn't seem to
How
want
dare
to
she
answer
berate
the old
them like
woman's
this the Omega
superfluous
Kotoku
question.
young master?
He merely sneered and
abruptly
waved his
creased
hand
his
to have the
brows
old woman
and turned his head
child
away in
carried away.
disgust. Then he
Qin
said
Jiu
coldly,
pursed his lips and
"I hope
said,
you won't waste
"Are
our
you
time."
crazy?
I'm sure
What did
anyone
it
with
have to
eyes
do
can
with
see
the
what
woman
the
from
situation
Medicine
is
King
like right
Island?
now. Like you
I hope
whether
those of you
or
who
not
have
they
been
have
lightly
medicinal
injured or
effects,
bitten by
and
zombies
whether or
will
not they
step
want to
forward
use
on
it.
your own accord.
Did you have to show
As
such
soon
an
as these words
interrogative
came
tone?
out,
Why
many
aren't you
people's
saying
faces
anything?
showed slight
And
panic.
Hanji stood
Ming
there
Yassi
majestically
said,
and
the
questioned
apothecaries in the
furiously.
group can
Earlier,
suppress the zombie
she clearly
poison
said
in
that
some
if
of
there
you.
was an apothecary,
If you don't step
they would
forward
step
now,
forward themselves.
don't blame us for
In the
treating
end,
you as
no one
despicable
paid her
and
any
shameless
attention.
people.
It was
who
simply
deliberately hid the
infuriating.
truth.
Before
We'll throw you out
Yen
here
could
for
slap
good.
this person away,
When he said this,
the little stoic
everyone
teleported
became
in
even
front
more
of an
nervous.
Hanji.
In the
And
subsequent
swiftly
tests,
darted her ferrule out
everyone
from her
was
sleeve.
extremely cautious.
Eldest young Sir
Their
Qin
hands
couldn't
touched
resist
the surface
covering
of the
his
water,
face with his hand,
and they didn't
he
dare
had a
to stay there
premonition
for long.
that the following
They immediately
scene would be
withdrew their
very
hands.
explosive.
Ming
As
Yassi
expected,
couldn't resist
the
using
little
his eyes
stoic's
to
frosty
size up the
face
little
that
stoic
wouldn't melt
standing
for
not far
1,000
away,
years, slapped
and a
an
strange
Hanji's
look
face
appeared
with
in
her
the
ferrule
depths of
without
his
a second
eyes.
word.
You can measure
After
it
a
so
crisp
quickly.
slap,
Arbor
and
glanced
Hanji
at
was
him,
still a little
nodded,
taken aback,
and turned to tug
she
at her
probably
husband's
never
hand.
expected that
Emma
someone
Yen
would
threw a
actually
cold
dare to
glance
lay
at
a
Ming
hand on
Yassi
her.
and said indifferently,
Someone from the
"I'll
dignified
leave this
Medicine
place
King
to you."
Island?
What did he
Hence,
mean by
when the
handing
other
it
ferrule
over to
slapped
him?
her right cheek,
Ming Yassi's
she
eyes
finally
turned
snapped
fierce
out of her
as
daze
he took
with
a few
grief and
steps forward.
indignation.
He was
Her
about
small
to
face
argue with Emma
contorted as
Yen
she
again
shouted
when
harshly,
he heard a cry of alarm
"You dare
from
lay
the
a hand
side.
on me?
Your Highness,
Xiao
this
Mu
is
flew
bad.
up and kicked
This
an
man is
Hanji
starting
in the
to
stomach,
mutate,
directly
Dark
sending her
gasped
flying.
turned his head.
She
And saw that a
somersaulted
small
3 times
area
in
in
a
front
row
of him
before
had
slamming
started to
her into
become
a low
chaotic.
dirt wall with a
His
bang.
gaze turned even
Everyone
colder
turned
as he
pale with
reprimanded
fright
angrily.
as they dodged to the
"What are
left
you
and
all
right.
standing there
They
for?
covered their heads
Hurry
and
up and
squatted
disperse
down,
them.
not
Don't
even
panic."
daring to breathe.
Continued to
Soon
test
after,
the remaining people
they
with the
discovered
liquid.
that the little
Don't
stoic
try
was
to
only
fish in
targeting
troubled
that
waters.
young lady from
In the
Medicine
end,
King
Divine
Island
Province and
She didn't
Ming
even
Province,
glance at the
each
others.
brought back
The
2,000
2
or
rows
so
of people
people
from
the
the
Medicine
Medicine
King
King Island
Island
glared
The
angrily.
remaining people
Just
would be
as they were
brought
about
back
to step by the
forward
4
with their
great cities
sabers
for
drawn.
consumption.
They were
Arbor
surrounded
and
by a
Emma
group
Yen
of black-clothed
didn't bring
youths,
so many people
unable
back to
to
the
move an
capital.
inch forward.
Instead,
Ridiculous.
they sent other people
What the
to
hell?
settle down
You
these
talk too
miserable
much.
commoners.
With a
The
cold
duo
expression,
arrived at the capital
the
a
little
day
stoic
later.
kicked an Hanji 3 times in a row, sending her tumbling heavily in front of eldest young Sir Qin. The
All
first
the young
news he
sirs of the
received
Qin
was that
estate
Empress Dowager
simultaneously
Chen,
retreated
who
3
had gone
steps
to
in
Mount
unison,
Heaven Saint to fast
and very
pray,
perceptibly
had
cleared
cleared out
out
an
an
empty space.
Yes, she was
for the
carried
little
back.
stoic to
It
display
was
her
said that
skills.
this
The
old
little
lady
stoic
began to fall
had truly
ill as soon
endured
as she
this
arrived at
person
Mount
for too
Heaven
long.
Saint.
If it
After
wasn't
a
for her
serious
master,
illness,
why
her
would she
entire
tolerate
body
her?
was emaciated,
Grandmaster,
as if
he
she
had
could be
such a
blown
good
away by the
temperament
wind.
and self-restraint.
She was very miserable.
How could he
and
have
pitiful.
taken in such a
King
foolish disciple?
Jianping submitted a
Did his
memorial,
brain fall into a
saying
manure
in a
ditch?
tearful voice
Did he
that
not
must
bring it out
back
when he
the
was
Empress
born?
Dowager
The little
to show his
stoic's
filial
pent-up
piety.
fury finally
He said that the
dissipated
Empress
after
Dowager
she was
was
kicked
old.
several times
If she
in
lived in the
succession
mausoleum all
and
year
given a round
round,
of violent
she would
beatings
inevitably
with the
be
ferule.
contaminated
She
with
turned
the
her
aura of
head and
death,
angrily shouted
which was
at Duan
naturally
Muqin,
not good for her
acting
body.
on your own initiative.
Moreover, from
Young
ancient
Sir Duan
times
was
until
a bit
now,
stupefied.
Jianping had done
Yuan
his homework.
Shurchen could not
He
help
had
but
listed
twitch the
countless
corner of
acts
his
of
mouth.
filial piety by emperors, generals, and ministers, and earnestly persuaded Lusheng to be filial and conform to the way of the emperor. Thus, Lusheng couldn't bear the annoyance,
and really brought the old lady back. But once he brought her back, Emo Lushing directly sent the old lady to King Jianping's residence, asking King Jianping to take good care of the Empress Dowager on his behalf. King Jianping, who had secretly received a large sum of money from Empress Dowager Chun, and was counting the spirit coins happily, was a little dumbfounded on the spot. Indeed, he had said that in the way of filial piety, he should take good care of the Empress Dowager. He had even written a long speech in front of His Majesty. But damn, he had never said that he wanted to bring Empress Dowager Chun back to live in his residence? He wasn't someone who had nothing to do, and liked to court death as much as he liked. What kind of good days could there be if he brought Empress Dowager Chun, this great Buddha, into his residence? He didn't expect that he actually found himself an old lady to take care of at home. Don't you think His Majesty is a fraud? As for the second news that Arbor and Emolien received, on the second day after all of them withdrew from Jiewei City was occupied by an unknown force. Now the entire city was filled with rotting corpse puppets. They were like the guards of this city, pacing back and forth, letting out sensational roars from time to time. Arbor was only silent for a moment before saying, Tianyin has a base on the surface. It will be slightly more convenient for us to deal with it in the future. Emolien smiled and nodded. Don't worry about this. Running back and forth is torturous. Let's rest for today. If there's anything, we can talk about it tomorrow. Arbor looked at her and nodded. Bathe together? Arbor nodded again. Emolien's eyes lit up when he heard this. He stepped forward and hugged his wife. Let's go. The next day, the Crown Prince was summoned to the imperial study by His Majesty early in the morning. The father and son spent the whole morning talking about Jiewei City. We can only do this for now, Emo Lushing said with a frown. In the past, Tianyin was in the dark while we were in the light. We were always on the defensive. Emo Lushing patted Emolien's shoulder and said in a low voice, Now that they are in the open, it will be easier to deal with them in the future. As the two of them were talking, a young eunuch reported, Your Majesty, Your Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Princess sent someone to inform the Crown Prince that she has been invited to King Jianping's mansion. Emo Lushing couldn't help but twitch his mouth, thinking, Is Jianping seeking death again? He turned back to look at his son. Sure enough, he saw that the latter's handsome face was already covered with dark clouds. He hurriedly said, Why don't you go back and take a look first? Emolien naturally had to go back. She walked out with a sullen face, turning a deaf ear to the great emperor's muttering, Don't scare your little uncle. Chapter 4198. She scared the old king of Jianping? Of course he was scared. When he heard a servant report that the crown princess's carriage had already arrived at the entrance, the old king of Jianping's hand trembled, and the half cup of hot tea directly spilled onto the ground. Fuck, why would this great Buddha suddenly grace his king of Jianping's estate with her presence? It wasn't that he was a coward, but he had suffered at the hands of this little ancestor time and time again. After being tricked by her, he wouldn't seek abuse for no reason. The old king of Jianping practically roared. Who invited her here? The servant replied with trepidation. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager said that she wants to see Her Majesty the Crown Princess. The old king of Jianping slapped his forehead, instantly looking like he was about to faint. He wanted to say something, but a cold and clear voice sounded by his ear. What? Does the king of Jianping not welcome this crown princess? The old king of Jianping's lips trembled. He really wanted to retort, So what if I don't welcome you? But when he opened his mouth, a flattering voice that even he found hard to believe came out. Ha ha ha, how could that be? The crown princess has graced us with her presence. My humble abode shines with light. My humble abode shines with light. Arbor glanced at him. Then his gaze landed on Emo Kuan, who was sitting upright and kneeling beside a small table with a teacup in his hands. How have you been, king of Jianping's heir? Emo Kuan, king of Jianping's heir, revealed a smile that he believed to be handsome and incomparably confident and at ease. He nodded and said, Thank you for your concern, Crown Princess. Emo Kuan has been doing well recently. The little Crown Princess snorted coldly. She turned around, and saw a servant girl dressed in a green servant's uniform, hastily crossing the hall to greet them. "Greetings, Crown Princess. Greetings, Your Highness in the air." "Your Highness, this servant is here on Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's order to invite the Crown Princess to the small garden." The old king of Jianping forcefully restrained his expression that was about to change and nodded calmly. "May I know why the Empress Dowager summoned the Crown Princess?" The little girl lowered her head and said very appropriately, "The Empress Dowager didn't say, so we didn't dare to ask." At this moment, the old king of Jianping wished he could whip the old woman and throw her into a frying pan. "If you want to cause trouble for the Crown Princess, why do you have to cause trouble in my mansion? Just how bored must you be to do something like this?" The little Crown Princess stared deeply at the little girl, who was bowing in front of her. After a while, the girl felt cold sweat dripping down her forehead. The Crown Princess suddenly said softly, "Lead the way." The moment she opened her mouth, the little girl felt the pressure on her suddenly disappear. She couldn't help but let out a long sigh. She didn't dare to act rashly, and bowed respectfully in front of Arbor. "Crown Princess, please." When he turned around and led the little Crown Princess out the door, the little girl couldn't help but clench her fists under her sleeves and quicken her pace nervously. After a while, the entire hall was filled with a deathly stillness. The maids and servants stood on both sides with lowered eyes. They naturally didn't dare to make a sound at this time, to anger their master. The old king of Jianping finally clapped his hands angrily. "What are you still standing there for? Go to the Eastern Palace and inform His Highness the Crown Prince. That brat better not think that I invited his wife." He didn't want to experience the virtues of those two black-bellied bastards again. Turning to look at Emokuen, who was still kneeling in front of the table and unmoving like a mountain, the king of Jianping couldn't help but feel angry. "What are you still sitting there for? Hurry up and scram into the palace to find your elder brother." "Well, Royal Father, my legs are weak." Royal Father couldn't tell that he wasn't kneeling, but directly kneeling. "I've been busy these 2 days, and I'm not in good spirits." Chapter 4199. Emokuen was at a loss for words, feeling extremely aggrieved. Did she think he wanted to do this? He truly felt fearful for no reason, after seeing the little Crown Princess. It was as if someone had struck the depths of his soul, and he inexplicably ordered his body to know its place. Boo-hoo. He didn't want to be so cowardly either. But what could he do? From what he could see, his old father didn't seem to be able to be tough with that person either. The old king of Jianping was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. He anxiously stomped his feet and pointed at the two page boys. "Why aren't you helping the heir up? Akuen, hurry into the palace and explain this matter to your elder brother. Explain it clearly." Of course, this matter had to be explained clearly. If the crown prince misunderstood and thought that their king of Jianping's mansion didn't like the crown princess and invited her over to cause trouble, wouldn't that be an undeserved calamity? Emokuen's face was bitter, and his expression was somewhat conflicted. "Royal father, can I not go?" Haha. His old father himself was afraid of the crown prince, so he sent his son. However, his son, Emokuen, also felt fearful when he saw the crown prince for no reason. It would be best if they didn't meet if they could. Emokuen looked at the old king of Jianping, his expression saying, "Don't screw your son over." The old king of Jianping was furious, and he kicked his son down the steps from the small table. Emokuen's face was bitter as he scrambled toward the door. Seeing that his old father was about to kick him again, he hurriedly shouted, I'll go, can't I go?" The old king of Jianping shouted in exasperation, "Hurry up and prepare the carriage for the heir. Hurry up." He kicked his son's butt again, kicking Emokuen out of the central room. Emokuen crawled up from the ground and fled outside like a fleeing rabbit. He ran out in tears, feeling aggrieved and pitiful. While the king of Jianping's mansion was in a state of chaos, the little crown princess followed the steps in the back garden of the king of Jianping's mansion, under the guidance of a maid. As the late emperor's youngest son, the king of Jianping was used to complaining about being poor and extorting benefits in front of his older brothers. Along the way to King Jianping's mansion, there were clusters of flowers and brocade. richly ornamented beams and painted rafters, and golden-colored glazed roofs that shone brightly under the sunlight. Ha! How could he be as poor as the old prince of Giant Pain, who cried outside? The little girl, who was leading the way, had her neck shrunk and her back arched, looking very cautious. Although she looked thin and small, her speed was not slow. Along the way, Arbor's lips were filled with mockery. She wanted to see what kind of tricks this Empress Dowager Chun had up her sleeves after finally coming back from Mount Heaven Saint. She was not Lian's father. A cold light flashed in Arbor's eyes, revealing a bit of killing intent. She had already tolerated the Empress Dowager, who disliked her in every way and always wanted to find trouble with her. Her patience had run out. The little girl in front of him suddenly stopped in her tracks and looked around. She revealed a bewildered expression at the right moment. There were a few drops of sweat on her forehead, which glowed faintly under the faint sunlight. "My apologies," the little girl said with trepidation. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager was indeed here before. Now she should have returned to her bedchamber. "Why don't the Crown Princess wait here for a moment? I will go to Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's residence to invite her." Arbor did not hesitate to fling a vine whip over and wrap it around the girl's waist. Chapter 4200. The little girl's expression changed slightly, and she hastily turned to look at Arbor. "Crown Princess, why are you doing this?" Arbor gazed at her apathetically. "This Crown Princess will follow you over to pay respects to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. There's no need to go through so much trouble." When she said the word pay respects, the little girl felt that the little stoic's voice was extremely icy for some reason. She shuddered for no reason, and her entire body inexplicably shuddered along with her. "What?" Arbor stared at her icily. "Do you still need to think carefully about where the Queen Dowager's bedchamber is?" The little girl shuddered for no reason. She instantly realized something when she saw the trace of mockery hanging on that stoic face. She was afraid that the Crown Prince Consort had already seen through her little trick. But that was to be expected. The Crown Princess was originally an exceptionally intelligent person. Her little trick was clearly not enough in front of the Crown Princess. Who could she blame? She could only blame herself for being inferior. If she had been a bit faster just now and Chun Gong had shaken her off, he could have escaped by himself and left her here. There wouldn't be any problems or troubles. In that case, she might have to initiate another plan. The little girl took a deep breath and suddenly reached out to press it to her lips. However, before she could whistle, she felt pain on her fingertips. His face was filled with horror as he looked down, only to see two severed fingers falling to the ground. Blood gushed out, and the girl's complexion instantly paled. She was on the verge of collapsing. Xiao Mu twirled the glowing dagger in her hand as she stared at her frostily with a pair of chilly eyes. After a long while she said, "Did you think that the fragrant powder scattered in this garden combined with the bewildering fragrance on your lapel would make me delirious after a long time?" The little girl couldn't help but shudder violently. Her eyes widened in shock as she stared at her in disbelief. It was as if Arbor had said something that made her feel extremely terrified. "Wishful thinking," Arbor said coldly. He glanced at the winding forest at the side. With a cry of surprise, a black figure was kicked out. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal smiled as he waved the small golden fan in his hand. However, his eyes were extremely cold. "Jojo, I caught a peeping Tom." Arbor's gaze fell on the black figure. He saw that it was a man in his early 20s, with oily hair and a powdered face. However, his shifty eyes kept darting back and forth in their sockets as they stared at Xiao Mu. Arbor asked coldly, "Who is this person?" The small garden was naturally quiet at this moment. The little girl, whose waist was wrapped by Arbor's wooden vines, didn't dare to speak. The man in his early 20s didn't dare to speak carelessly. Arbor said indifferently, "It doesn't matter if you don't want to talk. Search his soul." The girl looked at her in horror, her expression completely blank. She probably didn't expect that there would be such an arrogant person in this world. He proposed to search someone's soul, just because of a disagreement. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal smiled, and reached out to press the girl's head. The girl cried out in panic, "No, you can't kill me. You can't, ah." She screamed in horror and hurriedly roared, I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. It's the young master of the Chen family. Chen, the young master of the Chen family's branch family. Madame wanted to frame the crown princess. She found this young master of the Chen family to fabricate the truth. Chapter 4201. Using some catalyzing drugs to create the illusion that the crown princess and young master Chen are having an affair. Before she could finish, the venerable peach blossom immortal slapped her across the face. How dare you? Ma Shichen looked at the girl in disgust. At this moment, Xiaomu had already kicked the ashen-faced young master Chen to the ground. Her small foot stepped on the young master's face, ruthlessly rolling it around. Her eyes were filled with endless mockery. This brainless Empress Dowager was playing this kind of trick on her. It seemed that she had lived too comfortably in the harem for so long that she had completely forgotten what kind of world this was. A weakling dared to take advantage of her and wanted to teach her a lesson? Very well. At the same time, Empress Dowager Chen, who was eating seasonal fruits in her bedroom and enjoying the service of a palace maid, was leisurely leaning on the brocade couch. She was in a good mood and squinted her eyes slightly. She did not want to be so extreme, but that crown princess was too much of an eyesore. She blocked her way and was disobedient. She even took the position of Mo Lian's official wife and was not willing to give way to others. She ate the meat herself and did not even give others a drop of soup. Was there such a logic? Since that was the case, she could not be blamed for going all out and not showing any mercy. Empress Dowager Chen thought of the comfortable days to come and could not help but smile as she picked up a grape on the table. Just as she was about to put it into her mouth, she heard a loud bang. The door of her dormitory fell inwards with a loud bang, smashing into the ground with a loud bang. Empress Dowager Chen's fingers, which were holding the grape, froze. A slender red figure flew in and barged in. Outside, a thunder of drought came at the perfect moment. Boom! The eunuchs and palace maids kneeling by the Empress Dowager's feet all looked over in shock. Empress Dowager Crown Princess? At that moment, the little crown princess was dressed in a red battle robe. Under the thunderous drought, she looked particularly dazzling. Her snow-white face was expressionless. When she stared at the Empress Dowager, the latter shuddered unexpectedly. She felt like she was facing an evil spirit that had climbed up from the depths of hell. The little crown princess did not give them much time to react. She quickly walked forward and pulled Empress Dowager Chen off the fragrant brocade couch. She grabbed Empress Dowager Chen's long hair and dragged her out of the door like she was dragging a broom. Everyone was speechless. A eunuch reacted and screamed, "Empress Dowager!" When the young crown prince consort turned around to glare at him coldly, he immediately shut his mouth and obediently knelt at the side without moving. The Empress Dowager was rudely dragged from the couch to the floor. At this moment, because she was indoors, she was not wearing her outer garment. Her dudu was half undone, and her undergarments were in disarray. However, she was forced to drag the young crown prince consort out the door. Empress Dowager Chen's eyes were filled with flames of anger. She felt her mind go blank as she lost control of her emotions and screamed out loud. "What are you doing? Crown Princess, you are truly audacious. How dare you? How dare you treat Ijia like this? Do you still have Ijia and the previous emperor in your eyes?" Arbor raised her hand and slapped Empress Dowager Chen's face that was covered in thick makeup. A sense of joy immediately rose in his heart. This damn woman, she had wanted to teach her a lesson for a long time. Chapter 4202. Did she really think that she Xiaomu was a punching bag that would allow her to knead as she pleased, playing the dirty tricks of the palace all day long? Did she think that she Arbor was like those older sisters in the imperial harem who were defeated by her? Did she think that she could ruin her reputation and even earn Lian's disdain by using such unconventional tricks? Today, she wanted her to know the consequences of offending her, Arbor. When she thought of this, Arbor's hands didn't stop as she continued to drag the screaming Empress Dowager Chen towards the original small garden. She wanted to make things difficult for her again, right? Could the Prince of Jianpain not hear the Empress Dowager's screams? But did he dare to provoke the young crown princess? The Empress Dowager and the Crown Princess didn't go back to the palace to fight, but insisted on fighting in his Prince of Giantpain's residence. Who would believe him? The old Prince of Giantpain suddenly felt that his life was full of bitterness and despair. His heart was in turmoil. Hurry and send someone to the palace to see if that brat Emokuan managed to invite His Highness the Crown Prince. Your Highness, your wife has gone crazy. Hurry and stop her. The old Prince of Giantpain didn't know yet. It was definitely a wise move for him to be terrified and not dare to come over to check. If he dared to interfere, Sir Jojo would definitely beat him up without a second word. Arbor didn't care if this old woman was about to die from being dragged by her all the way. She didn't have any pity for the fairer sex, as she threw her onto the uneven dirt path in the garden. Empress Dowager Chen sat limply on the ground. Her hairpins were all messed up, her hair was disheveled, and her face was completely pale. That servant girl was originally tied to the side with wooden vines by Hu Jinshin. When she saw that the Empress Dowager was being dragged over by the young crown princess like a rag, she was immediately scared out of her wits. She struggled to free her hands that were tied behind her back and shouted sternly, "You, what do you want to do? What are you doing?" Arbor coldly glanced at them. His eyes were cold and indifferent, without the slightest bit of warmth. Such a bone-chilling gaze made Empress Dowager Chen's entire body tremble. Her heart was in a mess, and she had a feeling that today was going to be bad. "Crown Princess, you need to calm down." Empress Dowager Chen still wanted to say something to comfort the scary little crown princess. However, Arbor did not allow her to continue. He raised his hand and sprinkled a handful of powder on the three of them. "Enjoy it," she said coldly before pulling He-Chen away. Empress Dowager Chen's eyes changed as she looked at young Master Chen, who was crawling towards her while drooling. She finally shouted out in panic, Don't come over. You, what are you doing? Stop. You stand." Xiao Mu had purposely used a barrier to conceal the area where they were doing their work. This way, as long as she did not move away, no one would be blind enough to come and disturb the three of them. There was a hidden cold light in her eyes. When she returned to the King of Giantpain's residence with He-Chun, they saw the old King of Giantpain walking over with an uneasy expression. "Crown Princess, what instructions does the Empress Dowager have?" Arbor took the tea from the servant and expressionlessly glanced at the King of Giantpain. "I didn't meet the Empress Dowager at all. King of Giantpain, it was you who sneakily used the Queen Dowager's name to deliberately lure this Crown Prince consort here." Xiao Mu's small, solemn face abruptly changed on a whim. Chapter 4203. She slapped the armrest of the old Prince of Giantpain's large carved hardwood chair, causing a neat piece to fall off. The little stoic glared angrily at him with a frosty face. "Prince of Giantpain, are you trying to pick a quarrel and stir up trouble? Do you want compensation again? Do you know the consequences of deceiving this crown princess?" The old Prince of Giantpain's mouth twitched as he looked at the piece of wood that had fallen to the ground. He hastily bowed and begged for forgiveness, repeatedly claiming that he didn't dare. He kept crying injustice, and was just short of cursing and swearing to the heavens and earth. "Royal father, royal father, royal father!" Emokuan ran in joyously and saw his royal father standing cowardly in front of the little crown princess, gesticulating about who knew what the hell he was talking about. Emokuan's eyelid twitched. He heard the little crown princess ask crisply expressionlessly, "You mean the Queen Dowager really is in your estate?" Yes, it's absolutely true." The old Prince of Giantpain nodded repeatedly and volunteered. "Crown Princess, I can bring you there." "Royal father." Emokuan couldn't resist interrupting. "The Crown Prince is already at our estate's entrance with his people." "What?" The old Prince of Giantpain was startled, but he immediately revealed a joyous expression and hastily strode out the door. Good. Then us father and son will go to the front door to welcome His Highness the Crown Prince." "No need." An indifferent voice appeared at the entrance and blew to the little stoic's side like a gust of wind. Emo Lien grabbed his wife's small hand and sized her up from head to toe. He only sighed in relief after seeing that she was fine. He turned to glance at the Prince of Giantpain and his son before pulling Arbor's hand and quietly grumbling, Jojo, why do you come whenever someone comes to find you? There's no need to pay attention to some strange people. The old Prince of Jianping rubbed his nose. The Queen Dowager used his Prince of Jianping estate's name to send an invitation to the Crown Princess. Then this strange person must be referring to him. The old King of Jianping didn't dare to retort back. He could only feel slightly aggrieved in his heart. With a pitiful voice he retorted, "The Empress Dowager issued an imperial decree. I can't do anything about it." Prince Mo gritted his teeth as he held his wife's hand and asked, "Jojo, did that woman make things difficult for you?" There was no such thing. Not only was there no such thing, she was the one who had turned the tables and given her a taste of her own medicine, making things difficult for her. Thinking of the current situation in the garden, the little crown princess couldn't help but reveal a look of disdain on her cold little face. Mo Lian had been paying attention to her the whole time, and the slight changes on her face naturally couldn't escape her eyes. His Jojo seemed to be in a good mood. "Where is the Empress Dowager?" Mo Lian asked coldly. Today, he was going to make it clear to this old woman that his wife was not someone who could be taught by just any Tom, Dick or Harry. The old Prince of Jianping took it upon himself to lead the way, leading everyone in the direction of the Empress Dowager's bedchamber. "We'll reach the Empress Dowager after passing through this small garden." "Oh, that's right. Don't look at my garden. It seems to be very expensive. In fact, most of the precious flowers inside were sent over by my elder brothers." The Prince of Jianping sneaked a glance at Arbor and continued, "Ever since the last time we gave you, the Crown Princess, a series of compensations, life in the entire Prince of Jianping estate has taken a nosedive. It's very difficult." Arbor glanced speechlessly at the old Prince of Jianping. Chapter 4204. You can't just look at the surface of this garden and big house to see how precious they are. You have to look at their inner qualities. Most of the antiques in my residence, except for those that eldest brother and second brother gave me, which are genuine, the rest are actually fakes. Crown Princess, Your Highness the Crown Prince, I'm really very poor. This fellow's bitter and vengeful gaze made it seem as if Arbor was here to collect debts again. Did she look like someone who wanted to kill them all? Mo Lian's lips twitched without batting an eyelid. "Where's the Empress Dowager's descendant? Her bedchamber is just in front." Before the old King of Jianping could finish speaking, he seemed to hear a faint, strange sound drifting over from the other side of the flower bed. The little crown princess pulled a long face and instinctively took 2 steps back. Beside her, Wu Shirchen turned to look at Mo Lian and revealed a meaningful expression. Mo Lian rolled her eyes at him and reached out to pull his wife to her side. Hugging her, she whispered, "Wife, be careful. There might be something unusual in front." The old King of Jianping, Wu Shirchen, Mo Kuan, being caught off guard and being fed dog food was really terrible. In their eyes, Prince Mo, who was always showing off dog food, was really a little shameless. Especially the old King of Jianping, who was fuming with rage. Although his residence wasn't as impregnable as the imperial palace, nor was it as strictly managed as Prince Kang's residence, at least it was still passable. What did he mean by there was something unusual? How could there be something unusual? Unusual? The old King of Jianping's eyes instantly turned round. He suddenly saw that the small garden in front of him seemed to have opened up. In the flower bed in front, there were 3 white figures twisting together in a very frightening posture. One of them suddenly moved his body and turned his face around. When the old King of Jianping saw that face, he was so frightened that he fell to the ground on his butt. He kicked his legs and screamed, I'm blind, I'm blind." Arbor flipped her hand and took out 2 silver needles. "Here." The old King of Jianping looked at her in shock. Was she asking him to stab himself in the eyes? Damn it. This girl was too ruthless. How dare he make the Empress Dowager look like this? The King of Jianping had just shivered when he heard the young crown princess's cold and stern voice. How dare you? How dare you do such a despicable thing in broad daylight? Prince Mo reacted quickly as well. Although he had never heard his wife say that she would do this, he immediately got into character and started cooperating with her. His face sank, and he said angrily, "Are they all dead?" Hurry up and separate them. The disgusting appearance of these three people was simply an eyesore. The young crown princess stared coldly at the disheveled woman and sneered. What are you waiting for? Such a woman who tarnished the previous emperor's reputation naturally has to be executed immediately. Emolien then said, Someone give her 3 feet of white silk. Everyone. Wasn't it a little too fast for the two of them to sing and brag? Even if the county magistrate was trying a case, shouldn't he at least have a first trial? You guys, do you have to deal with the Empress Dowager so quickly and strangely? Arbor glanced sideways and saw Aoyi jump up with the white silk in his hands. Her eyes immediately twitched. A strange thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that Aoyi carried several strands of white silk with him in his inner world to deal with such sudden situations at any time? Empress Dowager Chen looked at the two men in black walking over quickly, and her pupils suddenly shrank. Let's adjust the time tomorrow. It's estimated to be 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Chapter 4205. Crown Prince. Empress Dowager Chen's powdered old face was ruined by the tears and snot flowing down her face. She was so angry that she was trembling. She pointed a trembling finger at the little crown princess. It's her. She framed Ijia. It's her. You can't not ask for the reason. Empress Dowager Chen looked in horror at the white silk around her neck and shouted, Stop, stop! Ijia was dragged out of her bedroom by the crown princess and thrown here. This bitch planned this, ah. Under the crown prince's gaze, Aoyi slapped Empress Dowager Chen's mouth without hesitation. The two guards took the white silk from Aoyi's hand and immediately wrapped it around her neck. They pulled the two ends and tightened it without any explanation. Arbor looked coldly at the Empress Dowager, who was kneeling there with a face full of panic. At this time, this woman didn't have any of her usual graceful and luxurious appearance. She was completely a dirty beggar woman with a sad face from crying. When did I go to your bedroom? Arbor's voice was cold. In Empress Dowager Chen's ears, it was especially heartless. You're the one who is shameless. You messed around with your Chen family's smelly bug, and now you dare to open your mouth? Arbor looked coldly at her. Empress Dowager Chen was already choked by the white silk, and she couldn't speak. Her old face turned purple. Suddenly, she heard a servant anxiously announce, Grand Concubine Fong has arrived. Left Prime Minister Chen Chaoji requests an audience. Grand Concubine Fong and Chen Chaoji hurried over. When they saw the scene in the garden, their expressions changed. Stop! Grand Concubine Fong shouted in shock. A person immediately jumped out from behind her and threw a dart at the Empress Dowager. It hit the white silk in the middle and directly cut it in half. The two guards each held a broken piece of the white silk and suddenly took a step back. Grand Concubine Fong quickly pushed aside the guards in front of her and ran to Empress Dowager Chen. She took a silk robe from a maid and wrapped it around Empress Dowager Chen, who was sitting on the ground in a mess. Empress Dowager Chen grabbed Old Concubine Fong's hand in tears. Old Concubine, are you here to save me? What the hell is going on? Old Concubine Fong hurriedly turned to look in the direction of Crown Prince. Crown Prince, Empress Dowager is the Emperor's father and your grandmother. How can you? The little stoic expressionlessly interrupted her. Grand Consort Fong, we don't blame you for going up to cause trouble without knowing the reason. However, it's best that you don't interfere in this matter, lest you attract trouble for no reason. You. Grand Concubine Fong was amused by this expressionless crown princess. Look at what he said, he was really not courteous at all. The Empress Dowager shamelessly ruined the reputation of the imperial harem, messing around with her grandnephew in broad daylight. The crown prince said with a cold expression, I'm giving her a death sentence for her sake. Old Concubine Fong's expression suddenly changed. She lowered her head to look at the Empress Dowager, who was wrapped in a silk robe and shivering. Her eyes showed some worry. She had long advised this old sister not to insist on becoming enemies with the crown prince and crown princess. However, she just didn't listen. Wasn't this a disaster? Even she didn't know what to do next. Chen Chaoji hastily stepped forward and cupped his hands, saying, Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. There must be something fishy about this matter. How is it possible for Her Majesty the Empress Dowager? Chen Chaoji's face was pale as he looked at that intoxicated young man, who was forced to kneel on the side, but still continued to make indecent movements. Chapter 4206. Of course, he recognized this Chen family disciple. But the problem was, no matter how bad the Empress Dowager was, why would she do such a thing with a grandnephew from a side branch? Moreover, it was in broad daylight. Was she that lonely? She must have been wronged. Although Chen Chaoji felt that the Empress Dowager was wronged, he couldn't find any evidence to prove that the Empress Dowager was indeed wronged. Thus, he could only mumble, "Your Highness. Your Highness Crown Princess." Emolien raised his hand and coldly said, "Left Prime Minister, you don't need to quibble for her. This matter concerns the reputation of the royal family. I believe that the Prime Minister must have made a choice." Choice. Chen Chaoji's heart thumped heavily. Empress Dowager Chen knelt there and saw a trace of hesitation and confusion on the face of the Prime Minister's nephew. She couldn't help but angrily shout, "No, it's not like what you said. Why aren't you slapping him awake? Slap him awake." Empress Dowager Chen shouted at the two Chen family manservants like a madwoman. When the two Chen family disciples saw this, they wished that they could poke their eyes out and pretend that they didn't see anything. They fearfully took a few steps forward, and under the urging of Empress Dowager Chen's cold gaze, they heavily slapped the Chen family's side branch grandnephew's face. The man woke up with a start, only to hear a sharp yell from the front. "Chen Qian, tell me honestly, who did you come to the garden to see?" Chen Qian's face was blank, and he hurriedly said the words that he had already silently repeated hundreds of times. "This lowly one is here to see the Crown Princess." The Crown Princess arranged for this lowly one to meet here, Arbor sneered. Empress Dowager Chen hurriedly crawled forward and glared at Emolien with a twisted face. "Did you hear that? Listen ah." Emolien ruthlessly kicked her to the ground, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood with a wah. You. Empress Dowager Chen's expression changed. She didn't expect that Emolien wouldn't care about her face at all. The little Crown Princess glanced at Chen Qian, who was trembling on the ground, with a look of disdain. Then, she threw herself into Emolien's arms. The latter naturally reached out and hugged her, raising his hand to caress the back of her head. Arbor turned his little head and stared at Empress Dowager Chen, as if he was looking at a corpse. After a while he said sarcastically, "You're crazy." "I'm not as crazy as the Empress Dowager, who would come to an unfamiliar Jianping mansion for a rendezvous for no reason. Furthermore, the Empress Dowager wants to frame this Crown Princess. Can you please find a more decent man?" The little Crown Princess did not hide the disdain on her face. She raised her head and reached out to grab Emolien's chin. She lifted it up slightly and turned to look at the Empress Dowager sarcastically. "Am I crazy? I don't want my husband, who is like a flower, and I want this broken thing beside you?" The flower-like husband silently lowered his eyes, blinked, and glanced at his little wife. "It's you, Empress Dowager. You're already so old. You've been buried deep in the palace all day, so you've already withered. That's why you're so desperate, and can pull in any kind of ghost for nourishment." Ha! Chen Chaoji trembled. He felt that the little Crown Princess's words were extremely vicious, but he couldn't find any words to refute it. "How did the Chen family produce a woman like you?" The little Crown Princess said in a cold voice, a cold light flashing in her eyes. "Unwilling to be left out, so shameless. What are you guys still standing there for? Send her on her way." No. I want to see who dares to stop me." Chapter 4207. The little stoic shouted coldly, and her chilly gaze circled around before landing on Grand Consort Fang's face. Grand Consort Fang only felt her body tremble slightly, and she hastily blocked Queen Dowager Chen with her arms. She earnestly advised, "Crown Princess, the Queen Dowager is indeed in the wrong in this matter. But, she's an old person in the palace after all. It's inevitable that she'll be a bit muddle-headed when she gets older. She didn't think things through, and went into a dead end. What nonsense." Arbor coldly gazed at Grand Consort Fang, and rudely interrupted her. "Even if the Heavenly Emperor came today, he wouldn't be able to save her. Do it. Yes. Aoi simply brought 2 royal guards and personally went forward to twist the white silk. Earlier on, the 2 broken pieces of white silk had been thrown onto the ground by him. Now he had taken out a new piece of it. As expected, Aoya's inner world was filled with quite a few pieces of white silk. Chen Chaoji hastily knelt down and kowtowed loudly in front of Prince Imo. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please quell your anger. Please forgive today's matter on account of the former emperor. On account of my Chen family. It's no use looking at anyone. Crown Prince Imo coldly interrupted Chen Chaoji's words as he gazed at the people behind him with a serene gaze. Prime Minister Zhua, you brought so many people here today to see such a lively royal scandal. Do you think we should let you all leave like this? Chen Chaoji felt chills all over his body. The group of Chen clan servants behind him were frightened to the point they rolled on the ground, and they repeatedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. They mumbled a mess of your servant didn't see anything, and your servant won't say anything. However, Emo Lian's extremely chilly gaze landed on them, as if she was looking at a group of corpses. The Prince of Jianpain and his son continued to cower on the side, not daring to utter a single word. It wasn't that they were cowardly and afraid of trouble. Their Prince of Jianpain's estate was truly innocent in this matter. Yet the Queen Dowager insisted on tearing apart the Crown Princess at the Prince of Jianpain's estate. With the Crown Princess's temper, it was already very polite of her not to behead this old witch on the spot. Now, for the sake of the imperial family, the Qin family should be secretly happy that the Empress Dowager's corpse was left intact. If they continued to cause a ruckus, the Crown Prince, who was soft-hearted, sick, and crazy, would annihilate the entire Qin family. What couldn't he do? He was angry because of a beauty. He was just like his father. Stay up late, grabbed one end of the white silk, and worked with another guard to tighten it. The Empress Dowager's hands desperately clutched the satin around her neck. She stared at Prince Emo and the little Crown Princess in horror. Her throat made a gurgling sound, and the light in her eyes dimmed bit by bit. Arbor stared at her coldly without any change in his expression. Old concubine Fong was stopped by 2 guards on one side. She couldn't rush over at all. She could only scream at the top of her lungs. No, no. Her gaze landed on the young Crown Prince Consort's stern face. For some reason, she couldn't help but shudder when she saw this expression. The 2 personal guards behind old concubine Fong were naturally stopped by the Crown Prince's people. Just now they were caught off guard and the white silk was broken. The people of the night pavilion were very angry. Naturally, they wouldn't let them go forward to destroy it. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager! Old concubine Fong cried bitterly. This appearance, the little Crown Princess's faint eyes couldn't help but glance at old concubine Fong's face. In the depths of the palace, was there such a friendship? This old concubine Fong was a good person who valued friendship and righteousness. Chapter 4208. Empress Dowager Chen's head drooped heavily and was placed to the side. Aoi stepped forward to report. Reporting to your highness, the Crown Princess and Empress Dowager Chen have been dealt with. Chen Chaoji's entire body couldn't help but tremble slightly, as if this was the first time he had seen this pair of demonic stars. He cast a fearful glance in the direction of the Crown Prince. Prince Imo only glanced at him coldly and then said, Left Prime Minister. Left Prime Minister Chen Chaoji immediately knelt on the ground in fear and said repeatedly, Your Highness, this subject didn't see anything today. This subject can swear a blood oath with these servants that we won't dare to say a word about Her Highness the Empress Dowager. Emo Lian looked at him indifferently and said, Left Prime Minister. Yes, old subject is here. This prince sees that your health hasn't been good recently, and you look old. Such a troublesome thing has happened at home. If you really can't do it, you can try your best to ask Imperial Father to remove you from your post and retire early. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Emolian's gaze was indifferent as he spoke, without the slightest ripple. But in Chen Chaoji's ears, it was no less than a shocking wave. So, the Crown Prince was forcing him to resign on his own accord? The Crown Prince's meaning couldn't be more obvious. If you leave by yourself now, you can still get a good reputation and retire well in your hometown. If this prince makes a move, Haha, Chen Chaoji's snot and tears flowed freely. His heart felt as bitter as if he had swallowed coptis. He hurriedly knelt and said, "This subject will consider it carefully." Prince Mo nodded indifferently, and then didn't look at him anymore. Grand concubine Fong was still silently crying beside Her Highness the Empress Dowager's corpse. Prince Mo glanced at her and said indifferently, "Her Highness the Empress Dowager is unrestrained and unethical. She can't enter the imperial mausoleum of Mount Heaven Saint. As for her funeral, Grand Concubine can think about it." After saying that, he took his wife's small hand and turned around to walk out. Grand Concubine Fong felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She was so angry that she couldn't help but sway. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, death is like an extinguished lamp. Even if the Empress Dowager and the Crown Princess had many grudges before, now that she is dead, shouldn't she enjoy the glory that belongs to her?" Mo Lian abruptly turned her head, her phoenix eyes revealing a terrifying storm. Old Concubine Fong was startled by his deep and terrifying gaze. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back. "If it wasn't for the sake of the royal family's reputation, I wouldn't have done it. Today, we should cut her into 1,000 pieces." Mo Lian roared angrily. "Now that we've left her with an intact corpse, what's there to be dissatisfied about? What was this old witch trying to do? He wanted to completely destroy his Jojo. Was there really such a disgusting woman in the world? There was no deep hatred between the two of them. So why did they have to do such a disgusting thing?" Old Concubine Fong was frightened by the Crown Prince's ferocious appearance. She took a few steps back and stammered, Your Highness? You don't know what's good for you." Mo Lian said angrily. "Come, throw this evil woman out of the imperial city and burn her." Old Concubine Fong was so scared that she couldn't help but fall to the ground. She reacted in a second and hurriedly begged for mercy. "Your Highness, you can't do this, you can't." Mo Lian didn't listen to her, and threw a glance at Aoyi. Aoyi immediately took the order, and led his men forward. They wrapped the old woman's corpse in a white silk cloth, jumped up the eaves, and disappeared without a trace. Old Concubine Fong couldn't help but burst into tears. She seemed to be caught unprepared. Chapter 4209. As for Qin Qianhe, that lass, who was kneeling on the side, she was already trembling all over in fright. How would she dare to utter a single word? "Your Highness, how should we deal with the two of them?" When Qin Qianhe heard someone mention them, he hurriedly waved his hands and shouted, "It has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me. It was Her Highness the Empress Dowager who summoned me here, saying that there's something good for me to take advantage of. How would he have known that this good thing would suddenly become a fatal disaster?" Mo Lian scoffed coldly. She had never seen such a brainless person. He didn't even consider that Empress Dowager Chen had him come over to slander the Crown Princess. Whether this matter succeeded or not, it didn't seem to benefit him. He only had himself to blame. Since he was willing to board Empress Dowager Chen's lousy ship today, he was certain that he would lose his life. Mo Lian didn't feel like wasting any more words with him. She directly waved her hand and said, "Doesn't Imperial Father have a barrel of bliss? Throw it in." "Yes. What barrel of bliss?" Qin Qianhe's face instantly paled in fright, scrambling to crawl in Chen Chaoji's direction. Uncle, save me." Chen Chaoji's old face darkened as he glared at him. When he saw him pouncing over, he dodged to the side without hesitation. The Chen family could be considered to have been destroyed in their hands. Save him? Right now, he hated that he couldn't eat his flesh and bones. So how could he save him? After that last Qin Qianhe was dragged away, Chen Chaoji's expression darkened, as he was also taken away by the Night Pavilion to sign the Heavenly Dao Blood Oath. Mo Lian pulled his wife's small hand and turned to the King of Jianpain and his son, who were still pretending to be quails. "King of Jianpain. Ah, here." The old King of Jianpain hurriedly came before the young couple and smiled apologetically. "Crown Prince, don't worry. No one in my King of Jianpain estate dares to say a word about today's matter." In reality, the servants of the King of Jianpain estate had already been dispersed by him. Other than him, Kuan and a few personal guards, there really wasn't anyone else who saw this farce. What kind of joke was this? The old King of Jianpain thought. He clearly knew that the Empress Dowager Jianping was tearing the crown princess apart in her estate. How could he be so stupid as to let people come and watch? What good could come out of watching? According to his past experience, none of the people who surrounded the pair of ominous stars would have a good ending. For example, Qin Chaoji today. The old king of Jianping chuckled with a brilliant smile on his face. Crown Prince, you can rest assured. Leave the matters here to me. The Crown Prince of Jianping, Mo Kuan, couldn't help but cover his face. He always felt that the flattering smile on his old father's face was very painful to the eyes. Mo Lian nodded and did not say anything more to King Jianping. He pulled his wife towards the entrance of King Jianping's mansion. The old king of Jianping and his son sent the young couple off all the way to the door. The joyful smile on their faces could not be concealed. Get the hell out of here. The young crown princess read these words from the old king of Jianping's eyes and looked at him expressionlessly. King Jianping, I see that the purple jade ink orchid in your courtyard is not bad. The old king of Jianping's heart thumped heavily, and he hurriedly revealed an innocent old face. Not at all, not at all. Crown princess, the exotic flowers and herbs in my estate are not even half as many as in Prince Kang's estate. Oh, the old king of Jianping's eyes twitched. He turned around and said, Come, hurry and bring the purple jade ink orchid out for the crown princess. Not long after, a servant hurriedly brought over a pot of purple jade ink orchid. The young crown princess reached out to hug the flower pot and expressionlessly looked at the old king of Jianping. Chapter 42:10. She casually tossed 2 storage talismans to the old prince of Jianping. A gift in return. She wasn't taking his precious flowers for free. She was exchanging them for something else. The old prince of Jianping was taken aback. He stared blankly at the back of the little crown princess as she boarded the carriage. He was already mentally prepared to be robbed by the bandit crown princess. Why was it so strange today? Dad. Mo Kuan reached out excitedly. I heard that the storage talismans drawn by the crown princess are extremely spacious and can store living things. Give me one, Dad. The old prince of Jianping casually stuffed the 2 storage talismans into his pocket before turning to leave. Mo Kuan? Was he his biological father? Arbor looked at the pot of flowers for a while before suddenly turning to hand it to Mo Lian. For you, Ji Chen, who was currently leaning against a corner of the carriage and drinking wine, nearly spat out her wine when she saw this. She teased, Yo, my flower-like husband. Arbor nodded his small head. Yes. Uffed. Ji Chen couldn't resist bursting into laughter. Mo Lian also patted her head in amusement before taking the pot of flowers and putting it away in her inner world. Jojo, you're so nice. Arbor's eyes curved as he grabbed his hand and asked, Will that woman's matter cause you trouble? What trouble can there be? Prince Mo harumphed. At most, he would be dragged to the emperor's study and reprimanded. She was already dead. If she became that old woman, would the emperor fly into a rage out of humiliation and hang his biological son up to give him a beating? An hour later, at the emperor's study. Mom. Prince Mo dashed out and hastily threw himself behind by Wuxia. The White Queen hastily shielded her child and glared at Mo Lusheng, who ran out of the study with a whip. She asked vigilantly, What are you doing? Mom. Royal father is going to beat husband. The little stoic angrily pushed Mo Lian behind her, glaring at Mo Lusheng with a shared hatred for a common enemy with the White Queen. Mo Lusheng. This damned brat was getting more and more promising. He was wondering why he had obediently come here to receive his punishment today. It turned out that he had asked his wife to go and get reinforcements. The Empress Dowager did such a shameless thing. Why did you hit your son? Empress Bai said angrily. It wasn't your son who asked her to do it. Mo Lusheng looked at his wife speechlessly and pointed at Mo Lian and Arbor. It would be strange if this matter had nothing to do with them. No matter how desperate the Empress Dowager was, it was impossible for her to go to Jianping Mansion and do such a thing in broad daylight. Arbor said angrily, Mother, Imperial Father is being unreasonable. This matter clearly has nothing to do with my husband. That's right. The White Empress protected her son, and glared at Emma Lushing in annoyance. Don't bother my son with such nonsense in the future. They didn't have eyes, yet they insisted on provoking us. They deserved to die. The Empress snorted. She had long sent people to Jianping Mansion to investigate this matter in detail. So how could there be anything she didn't know? The Empress Dowager was in the wrong, but the two of them actually scared Grand Consort Fong into falling ill. The White Empress was taken aback and then snorted. It must be because she couldn't take the scare. The young couple nodded at the same time, expressing their great agreement with their mother's words. The Emperor was instantly angered into laughter. Just as he was about to roar at this pair of treasures, he suddenly saw a eunuch hurrying over and repeatedly kneeling. Your Majesty, Lord Preceptor of the State has sent an urgent report. What happened? The Emperor took the letter the eunuch presented and opened it to read. His expression changed slightly. Chapter 42:11. Prince Mo poked his head out from behind the White Queen and glanced at the letter in his father's hand. What kind of message could that state preceptor send back? He was probably thinking about his wife again, right? What is it? The queen glanced suspiciously at the letter in Emma Lushing's hand. Emma Lushing didn't hide it from her and directly handed the letter over. Wuxia swept a glance over it and harumphed. Truly absurd. Since the Sea of Forgetfulness's dragon clan wants to see their daughter-in-law, why didn't they come to receive her themselves? They actually detain the state preceptor now, and even sent a letter to threaten him? What does this mean? Arbor was startled and looked at the letter in the White Queen's hand. The queen turned and handed the letter to Arbor. Jojo, just take a look. You don't need to pay attention to this. What hasn't the state preceptor seen before? How could he be detained so easily this time? Seeing that his wife was suspicious, Emma Lushing couldn't help but defend the state preceptor. After all, he's in the sea. No matter how capable the state preceptor is, it's probably hard to deal with some things in the sea. Besides, the dragon clan has many clansmen, and the state preceptor only brought several dozen people on this trip. If the other party insists on detaining them, there's nothing we can do. Wuxia harumphed. In short, my daughter-in-law isn't going anywhere. She has to rush over just because the Sea of Forgetfulness's dragon clan wants to see her? What kind of logic is that? Emma Lien nodded, very much agreeing with her mother's words. If they want to see my wife, then let them send someone to invite her themselves. Not only did they have to invite her, they had to invite her loudly and announce it to the whole world. His Chiao wasn't a little stray cat on the roadside that anyone could pick up and bring home. Emma Lushing speechlessly looked at his wife and son's identical disdainful expression and facepalmed. All right, then send a letter back to them, and let the Dragon Clan's clansmen consider it themselves. The Crown Prince nodded and pulled his wifey's hand over. He lowered his head to glance at the little stoic. Jojo, if you don't want to go, no one can force you. Xiaomu raised her head to look at him, her lips curling up as she replied in a gentle voice. I know. Wuxia chuckled and pulled the child with one hand, and his daughter-in-law with the other. Little Tang Yuan's wife, it's about time. Let the three of us go and have a meal. Emma Lushing hurriedly took a few steps forward and called out aggrievedly. Wuxia, Emma Lien smiled. Mother, what about father? Your father? He's busy with government affairs. And let him eat by himself. Wife, Emma Lushing raised his feet and followed. How could he be willing to fall behind? He was wrong, okay? I won't hit my son next time. At the very least, he had to find a time when Wuxia wasn't around to beat up that little bastard. Otherwise, wouldn't he be asking for trouble? Wuxia pursed her lips in amusement and winked at her son, silently implying, Son, don't be afraid. Look at how obedient your father is in your mother's hands. Emma Lien's phoenix eyes curved slightly, and she nodded with a smile. The family of four chased each other to the dining hall and had a rather sumptuous meal. Afterwards, the Crown Prince followed the Emperor to the study to discuss matters. Queen Bai pulled her daughter-in-law to chat about their matters in the lower star domain. When the Crown Prince came to pick them up later, he looked at his mother's smiling face and asked curiously, Mother, how was your chat with Jojo? It was very good. Queen Bai didn't understand why her son asked this. Chapter 42:12. Emolian couldn't help but want to laugh. He suppressed his smile and tugged at his wifey's hand. Jojo, what were you talking about with Mother this afternoon? We were talking about you. Arbor's eyes sparkled as she said. You were so cute when you were young. It couldn't be, weren't they just chatting? Could it be that Mother was the only one chatting? Mother told him everything that happened before he was 3 years old? Emolian instantly felt unwell. What good things could happen before he was 3 years old? Wasn't it eating, drinking, and pooping everywhere? Apui. Emolian pulled his wifey and fled from Mother's place. He pinched his wifey's little face. Jojo, forget everything Mother said before. That won't do. Xiaomu hugged him and climbed up his waist. I've remembered everything that royal mother told me. I didn't expect you to be so fun when you were young. No wonder people call you little glutinous dumpling. Emolian, where was his authority? The next day, Arbor went to the Star region to visit Duan Muqing. Her expression was especially serious. Qi Xianxian saw that she pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. Jojo, is it especially serious? Xiaomu's small stoic face was taut. She abruptly flipped her wrist, and a glistening green fruit with small hairs on it appeared in her palm. The fruit was only half the size of a palm. It looked sparkling and translucent, and a strange fragrance wafted over. When Qi Xianxian smelled the aroma, her saliva almost dripped out. Her eyes widened as she said, Look, it looks delicious. Little Fatty's mouth twitched, and he reached out to tug at her. Why was this child so easily tempted by good food? Jojo, what is this? Lu Yu, Jiang Shaoxin, Ma Ta and the rest also surrounded her, and looked curiously at the fruit in her hand. Holy fruit, Arbor said expressionlessly, his large eyes glaring fiercely at Duan Muqing. Duan Muqing smiled bitterly and nodded at her. Yes, I was too presumptuous. I still have to ask Jojo first. Qi Xianxian hurriedly nodded. It's good that you admit your mistake. Jojo, is this the fruit of the little tree? Mata asked with a smile. Arbor nodded, and threw the fruit into Duan Muqing's hands. Fortunately, the second sacred fruit that the small tree bore had already taken shape in the divine territory. Otherwise, Duan Muxian would have to use the medicinal power to control his wounds and wait for a while. Now, there were 4 or 5 small fruits hanging on the branches of the little tree. It seemed that as long as the star field was filled with divine power, it would not be a problem to obtain more saint fruits in the future. If a god domain was transformed into a saint domain, perhaps the holy fruits could be endless as well? Perhaps she could first feed the little tree with the holy stone ores that the venerable peach blossom immortal and the others had excavated? While Arbor was deep in thought, Duan Muqing had already eaten the sacred fruit. Everyone looked at him eagerly and could not help but ask, How do you feel? Is it delicious? Qi Xuanchuan's question made everyone laugh. This child only cared about whether it was delicious or not. How much was she drooling? Duan Muqing slowly raised his hand. Everyone could clearly see that the rotting wound on his wrist was gradually disappearing in a matter of seconds. Little Fatty exclaimed happily, Quick, look at the wound. This sacred fruit is really magical. Duan Muqing was also rather excited. Chapter 42:13. She hurriedly looked up at Arbor and called out softly, Jojo. Arbor nodded. I'll get Little Tree to send you to the island. Focus on your advancement, and don't think about anything else. Duan Muqing nodded and disappeared in front of them. Qi Xianxian giggled and said, Jojo, Duan Mu ate the holy fruit. Can he still advance? Yes. Arbor thought for a moment and said softly, If there are no accidents, he should be able to break through to the godly state. Everyone's eyes widened, revealing a shocked expression. Was the holy fruit so effective? Duan Muqing could break through to the godly state with just one holy fruit? Does that mean Duan Muqing will soon enter the 5 spirits reincarnation? Arbor grunted. When he finishes advancing, we'll send him out of the star sector. The 5 spirits reincarnation should not be a big problem for Duan Muqing. As long as he entered the godly state and stabilized his cultivation, the 5 spirits reincarnation was just a formality. Everyone chatted for a while more before Arbor sent them off to play. When she left the star sector, She saw Prince Emo step through the door and smile at her. Jojo, father received a message from the Sea of Forgetfulness's dragon clan early this morning. With that, he handed a jade talisman to Arbor. Arbor touched the jade talisman and saw a message on it. To the Emperor of the Divine Prefecture. The Dragon Clan has sent people to the Divine Prefecture's imperial capital, Dragon Flame City. The transportation talisman array will arrive in a few days. We'll talk then. Arbor raised his eyebrows and said noncommittally, "Oh." His attitude was cold, as if it had nothing to do with him whether they came or not. Emolian knew that she had a knot in her heart about the Dragon Clan. He patted her head and said softly, "Let's listen to what they have to say." Arbor glanced at him. "We have nothing to do today. Let's go to the hot spring at Half Moon Cliff's splendid villa." "Sure." Emolian nodded and smiled. "Your Highness." Xiao Yi jumped in from outside the high wall and said with a gloomy expression, "Something happened, Your Highness." Emolian raised her eyebrows slightly. "What happened, Your Highness?" Xiao Yi cupped his hands and said, "The people of Medicine King Island are carrying Sir Hewen's corpse and making a ruckus at the entrance of the palace. She's clamoring to find the crown princess and pay with her life." Arbor was taken aback. Sir Hewen passed away? What was going on? When they parted ways in Jiawei City, Hewen and Enai Hanji were still fine. Why did Sir Hewen die in less than 2 days? Emolian also frowned. "What's going on? I've already sent people to investigate, but I haven't found out the details yet." Xiao Yi said, "Your Highness, we can't let them make a ruckus outside the palace gate. Should we chase them away?" Emolian sneered. "One of their own is dead. Why are they looking for my crown princess? Let's go and take a look." Arbor looked puzzled. Sir Hewen had died inexplicably, and the people of Medicine King Island were looking for her. No matter how she looked at it, there was something fishy about this matter. Hewen's personality had always been peaceful, and he treated people very well. Arbor also couldn't figure out who would have wronged him. Emolian lowered her head and glanced at her. "You don't have to care about these things. I'm fine." Arbor raised her hand and shook Missouri Lian's hand. She also had doubts in her heart, so she naturally wanted to go out and see what was going on. Moreover, the people of Medicine King Island had already come to pick on her. If she shrank back and didn't accept the challenge, wouldn't it make people think that she had a guilty conscience and didn't dare to meet people? What a joke! Chapter 42:14. Emolian also thought of this point. She exchanged a glance with Arbor and said with a nod, "All right, I'll have someone make the arrangements." At the same time, Enai Hanji was kneeling beside His Excellency Hewen's corpse, her head drooping as she secretly wept. Several hundred Medicine King Island disciples around her were clamoring loudly to have her come out. "Have her come out to see us. She sent people to kill His Excellency Hewen. What? She dares to do it but doesn't dare to admit it. Don't think that you'll be fine if you hide in the palace and don't see anyone. Our Medicine King Island isn't that easy to bully. Right. Have her come out. Come out." The crowd was surging with emotions. Many common people only dared to hide in the corners of the street far away, secretly peeping at the scene. Medicine King Island made such a big fuss by directly carrying His Excellency Hewen's corpse to the palace gates. This incident alarmed both inside and outside the imperial court in less than an hour. People like the king of Giantpain naturally wouldn't go to watch the little crown princess's commotion. But there really weren't a small number of people who ran over to watch, because they had nothing better to do. Unlike the common people, those skilled and bold cultivators either jumped onto the nearby eaves, or simply stood behind Medicine King Island's group to take a closer look. "What do you guys think is going on here?" "I don't know. We also went last time in Jiawei City. The crown princess did indeed attack Great Master Hewen's disciple Miss Enai Hanji. But in the end, after His Excellency Hewen appeared, the crown princess let them go." From what those people from Medicine King Island are saying, the crown princess flew into a rage out of humiliation after the incident, and still didn't give up sending people to make trouble for Miss Enai. His Excellency Hewen was impatient to save his disciple, and was heavily injured by several masked men. He died not long after. That's truly tragic. I heard he was slashed 17 to 18 times consecutively. Even if he was a cultivator, he wouldn't be able to withstand this kind of attack. This person described it vividly, as if he was present at the scene. Everyone immediately filled in a series of scenarios in their minds, describing the little stoic as a narrow-minded and extremely vicious person. The few people who were spreading the rumors were still talking in the crowd when they suddenly felt a chill on their necks. When he looked again, he saw that he had been lifted up by someone and was being carried towards the palace gate. The few of them screamed at the same time. In the blink of an eye, a group of purple forest guards had thrown him in front of the people from Medicine King Island. Enai Hanji, who was kneeling on the ground with her head bowed, was startled. She instinctively took a step back and glared angrily at one of the purple forest guards. "What are you trying to do?" The disciples of Medicine King Island flew into a rage. Several of them drew their swords from their waists. "Your Highness, the Crown Princess has arrived." As the palace door opened, Emolien and Arbor walked out hand in hand. No one could see any hint of panic on the little Crown Princess face. From beginning to end, there was only an indifferent stoic face, and her watery eyes swept over everyone. The few people who were seen by her clear eyes immediately felt a sense of inferiority. It was as if they were merely clowns jumping around like bedbugs and grasshoppers jumping around in front of the palace gate. Under this kind of dazzling light, everyone was at a loss for what to do. Standing at the very front of Medicine King Island's group was a young man in flowing white clothes. His long hair was combed meticulously, and his expression was very solemn and dignified. "Your Highness, Crown Princess, this is Medicine King Island's young island master, Sir Wei-Su." Chapter 42:15. Aoyi took a few steps forward and introduced this young master in a deep voice. Because it was obvious that the little Crown Princess did not know this person at all. Arbor sized him up and saw that although this person was young, his face was cold and solemn, as if someone owed him 108,000 taels of silver. He looked dignified but old-fashioned. It seemed that his temperament was also very rigid. Arbor gave a fair evaluation in his heart. His gaze moved elsewhere and landed on Enai Hanji, who was kneeling on the ground and crying. Oh, it had only been a few days, but this Enai Hanji looked much more haggard. Her pair of lively big eyes were now sunken. Her hands clutched the hem of her clothes tightly as she knelt beside Hewen, tears still falling from her eyes. Miss Ni's current crying appearance was obviously much better than a few days ago, when she was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws in Jiawei City. Just by looking at how many people around her were looking at her with sympathy and pity, one could see how pitiful this Miss Enai was at this moment. Compared to the evil little Crown Princess, this Miss Enai was obviously much more pitiful. Wei-Su bowed to Emolien and Arbor, and went straight to the point. "This Wei is here to discuss the matter of our island's great consecrator, Hewen." Emolien saw that this person was well-mannered, and had a decent attitude. She said faintly, "After we parted in Jiawei City, we husband and wife have not met with your island's great consecrator." Enai Hanji suddenly raised her head and suppressed a trace of anger. "Of course you didn't come to find trouble with us. Isn't it the same for people of your status, to send people to find trouble with us? Those black-clothed youths who came to kill me were dressed like them." Enai Hanji's face was full of anger as she pointed at Aoyi and the others. The latter looked innocently at the people of Medicine King Island, and couldn't help but laugh. "Miss Enai, you're too funny. What can this attire mean? You Medicine King Island people can also wear this kind of black clothes, if you want to change your clothes." Enai Hanji said coldly. "The Crown Princess says one thing, but behind her back, she's saying something else. If it's not her, who else can go against us? Who would be so persistent as to send people to kill me? It's all because I offended her back in Jiawei City," Enai Hanji said in a tearful voice. "At first, she had no choice but to let me go because of my master Hewen. The more he thought about it, the more unhappy he felt. That's why he secretly sent people to surround and intercept us. Master died to protect me. The murderer must pay with his life. A life for a life. A life for a life." The disciples of the Medicine King Island roared in agitation. Their young faces were filled with indignant anger. Arbor turned his head and glanced at them. His cold gaze fell on Wei Su. After a while he said, "Everyone on Medicine King Island has no problem with their intelligence, right?" The little crown princess's voice was not loud, but it was clearly heard by everyone present. Everyone couldn't help but be slightly stunned. "You're saying that I sent the purple forest guard to kill someone? Where's the evidence?" Arbor looked at them coldly. "Just based on Inai Hanji's mouth? Then can I also say that Sir Hewen was killed by Inai Hanji?" Inai Hanji's expression changed and her eyes turned red. Chapter 42:16. An ominous glint blossomed from the depths of her bloodshot eyes, as she abruptly glared at Xiao Mu. She shrieked, "Xiao Mu, you're so vicious. I've never seen such a vicious person in my life." Inai Hanji shrieked. "How can you slander others like this?" Arbor's cold eyes scanned her body. Suddenly she said calmly, "Originally, I was just like you, speaking as soon as I opened my mouth. But now, I'm really going to suspect you?" A person's first reaction of guilt and fear was the most realistic. Just now when she said, "Inai Hanji killed Sir Hewen," Inai Hanji's expression changed abruptly. It was as if she would die from fear in an instant. It was too realistic, too realistic. But was it just a possibility? Inai Hanji was Sir Hewen's only disciple. Hewen had always valued and loved her. For Inai Hanji's sake, he had not hesitated to bear the punishment himself in Jiawei City, and stood up to ask the little crown princess to let Inai Hanji go. Logically speaking, Inai Hanji should be respectful to her master. She could not have done such a thing, unless something had happened between them. Wei Su's handsome face was as dark as water. He turned to Arbor and said coldly, "Crown Princess, you must have proof before you speak. You slandered junior sister Inai like this. Do you think the people of Medicine King Island can be bullied by others?" Arbor glanced at the man coldly. "You also know that you must have proof before you speak? Then why did you carry Sir Hewen's corpse and cause a ruckus in front of the palace without proof? Also, you sent people to mix in with the crowd and spread rumors. Do you think this crown princess has a good temperament and can accept everything?" Wei Su's face darkened. "Who sent people to spread the rumors?" Aoyi stepped forward and kicked a hooligan on the ground. "Then we'll have to ask the person who spread the rumors." With that, he gave a look and the purple forest guards went forward to search the hooligans. They each found a small bag of spirit coins. The bags were of the same design and had the same weight of spirit coins. It was obvious that they were given to them by the same person. Wei Su's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. "Who paid you to come here and spread rumors?" The thugs begged for mercy, but they didn't know who gave them the money. Everyone said that when the man appeared, he was wearing a bamboo hat, gave them a bag of spirit coins, and asked them to say a few words in the crowd. What else was there to be unclear about? Sure enough, someone had secretly arranged this, bribing these idlers to come to the palace gates and spread rumors. "Inai Hanji, are you that bamboo hat man?" Arbor coldly glanced at her, taking in her exceptionally pale complexion. This person's guilty expression was too obvious. Inai Hanji's face turned angry as she snapped, "You've wronged me." "Wrongly accused?" Xiao Mu gazed coldly at Inai Hanji and asked, "Do you think that no one will know what you've done in secret?" Inai Hanji's expression changed abruptly. Her hands tightly clenched the corner of her skirt. What do you mean by that?" The spirit summoning charm was disrespectful to the dead. Arbor naturally didn't want to use it on Sir Hewen. Arbor had another method that could quickly investigate the truth. She cast a thought-provoking glance at Inai Hanji. "Have you heard of time reversal?" Inai Hanji's heart pounded. She had a feeling that the situation was about to spiral out of control. Chapter 42:17. How could it be like this? Things shouldn't have developed like this. Why did this matter take a turn for the worse when it came to the young crown princess? Inai Hanji's gaze was a bit panicked and uneasy. She glanced at Arbor and bit her lip before saying coldly, "I've truly never seen someone as malicious as you. You did such a vicious thing yourself. Yet you still wrongly accuse others." The little stoic raised her hand and was about to throw out a dictum talisman. However, the latter immediately shrunk back in fright and scrambled behind the young man. She cried out in alarm, "Senior brother Wei Su, senior brother Wei Su, save me. She wants to kill me to silence me, to silence me." Wei Su gazed icily at the young crown princess and raised his hand to block an Hanji. He said gravely, "Crown princess, the matter hasn't been explained clearly yet. Isn't it inappropriate for you to act rashly like this?" Arbor was simply amused by this inflexible young man. He put away the dictum talisman and said coldly, "This is a dictum talisman to make her speak the truth. I didn't want to kill her." Wei Su frowned noncommittally, and his expression contained a bit of distrust. He straightened his body and blocked an Hanji's path like this. At this time, Qi Xianxian, the little fatty, and the others stealthily ran out from the star domain and blended into the crowd. When they heard Arbor's words, they couldn't resist jeering and sneering. "Oh, look at this Miss and I. Is she that scared? It can't be that she really did something shameful, right? That's right. If she doesn't have a guilty conscience, why would she fear the dictum talisman test?" Enai Hanji's face was livid, and her eyes kept darting around. She shouted angrily, Who is hiding in the crowd? Come out and speak if you have the guts." Qi Xianxian harumphed and quickly walked out of the crowd. "Come out and speak then. Do you think I don't dare?" Enai Hanji stared at Xianxian coldly. She bit her lip and leaned against Wei Su's leg. "Senior brother Wei Su, you can't believe their words. It's Arbor. Arbor sent people to kill my master. It's her. Miss and I, don't be so presumptuous as to slander me. That day in Jiawei City, our Jojo let you off for the sake of your master. With her personality, she wouldn't be so bored as to send someone to cause trouble for you. That's right. If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it on the spot. Why would I need to go through so much trouble?" Little Fatty snorted. "You are all her relatives and friends. Naturally you will speak for her." Enai Hanji cried out with a pale face. She couldn't help but shrink behind Wei Su. "Senior brother Wei Su, you must help me. Help me. They want to kill me. Kill me. Don't tell me you have paranoia." The little fatty glanced at the woman speechlessly. Enai Hanji's cowardly appearance was indeed very difficult to enter Wei Su's eyes. However, as the young master of Medicine King Island, he had to prioritize the people of Medicine King Island in everything he did. Although he was extremely displeased that Enai Hanji showed such cowardice in front of outsiders, relatively speaking, he still believed Enai Hanji's words more. His Excellency Huan treated Enai Hanji so well. So how could junior sister Enai harm her own master? That crown princess was simply making irresponsible remarks and spouting nonsense. Arbor stopped Qi Xianxian and the little fatty, who still wanted to argue, and turned to look at Wei Su. "If it's proven that I've been wronged, how will Medicine King Island compensate?" The little stoic's voice was chilly. Chapter 42:18. Like beads falling onto a jade plate, her clear eyes that could reflect a person's figure were even more serene. Wei Su looked at this pair of eyes and couldn't help but be a bit puzzled. This little stoic's eyes were clear and cold, looking very open and candid. She didn't seem to be as vicious as Enai Hanji had previously fabricated, extorting personal gains in return. Wei Su pondered for a moment before nodding and saying, "If this matter is proven to be unrelated to the crown princess, then it's my Medicine King Island's fault. At that time, I, Wei Su, will personally apologize to the crown princess and offer her a 9 abyss spiritual fruit." Everyone started whispering to each other upon hearing this. Whether it was ordinary people or cultivators present, very few people had heard of the 9 abyss spiritual fruit. But Arbor naturally knew. This was a divine rank medicinal fruit. It was sparkling and translucent like a grape, but its color was light gold. It was said that long-term consumption would help increase one's divine power. It wasn't important whether it could increase one's realm, but it was said that its taste was extremely good. After being chilled in midsummer, it was crisp and tasty, and it was also extremely hydrated. Thinking about it, if this fruit was planted in the star domain, it should be pretty good. Arbor didn't give Wei Su a chance to back out and said with a nod, "Remember clearly what you said." Mo Lian lowered his head to glance at his wife and slightly loosened his grip. The little stoic nimbly formed several transparent hand seals in succession, scattering them into the surrounding air in succession. Suddenly, the still air around them continuously produced strips of ripples, dispersing before everyone's eyes like water waves. Enai Hanji knelt next to His Excellency. He went and tightly gripped a corner of her skirt. She revealed a hesitant and indescribable expression. What was the stoic face doing? Her indescribable hand seals looked complicated and strange. They didn't seem like talisman techniques. Enai Hanji wished for nothing more than to explode and kill her on the spot. However, doing so would instead expose the drawback of her guilty conscience. She sat there stiffly, unable to budge an inch. At this time, a very clear and transparent image appeared in front of Wei Su. The surrounding crowd let out a series of gasps and exclamations, evidently also seeing the appearance of this transparent image. There were only two people's figures in the image, and it moved very quickly. Ordinary people with poor eyesight could only see the two people arguing. Wei Su's face darkened bit by bit. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the two people in the image were Enai Hanji and He-Wen. Sir He-Wen seemed to be reprimanding Enai Hanji at first. After that, Enai Hanji seemed to reply with something. Sir He-Wen then stared at Enai Hanji in shock, and barely managed to stabilize himself. Just as he was about to leave, Enai Hanji stopped him. His Excellency He-Wen argued with her for a while. He angrily flicked his sleeve, kicked Enai Hanji and said something. Enai Hanji knelt down and kowtowed, hugging Sir He-Wen's leg and begging for something. He-Wen's face sank, but he didn't take it to heart. He angrily threw down these words and walked towards the door. Thus a classic scene occurred. Enai Hanji pulled out a short dagger from her waist and stabbed at the back of He-Wen's waist. Sir He-Wen fell down with a stunned expression. He wanted to turn his head to look at his disciple, but he was unexpectedly stabbed a few more times by the dagger. At the end of the image, it was Enai Hanji holding a bloody dagger with a vicious expression. Gasps could be heard all around. The disciples of Medicine King Island, who were originally making a ruckus, all turned to glare at Enai Hanji. Chapter 42:19. What was there to be unclear about now? Although there was no sound in the video, how could Enai Hanji stab His Excellency He-Wen desperately with a knife in the video be fake? Enai, junior sister Enai. A green-robed woman beside Wei Su roared. You! Wei Su was naturally so infuriated by this scene that his entire body trembled. He looked at Enai Hanji, as if he was looking at a dead person. Enai Hanji shuddered under this gaze and hurriedly shouted, "It wasn't me, it wasn't. Senior brother Wei Su, senior sister Yin Shui. Don't be fooled by this witch. This is witchcraft, witchcraft." Enai Hanji's body trembled as she shouted angrily, "You know, she's a talisman master, so she naturally knows witchcraft. Pretending that my master was killed by me. Isn't that what she's good at? How could I possibly kill my master?" Enai Hanji hurriedly crawled a few steps on the ground and crawled in front of Wei Su and Yin Shui. She cried out in a low voice, "Senior brother Wei Su, senior sister Yin Shui, I've been framed." Scram! Yin Shui, who abhorred evil, kicked Enai Hanji away. Her eyes were spitting fire as she unsheathed her sword with a clang. "You're a crazy bastard. How did Sir He-Wen treat you? Everyone on Medicine King Island knows about this. You murderous beast, you're worse than pigs and dogs. How dare you treat Sir He-Wen like this? Today I'll get rid of you on behalf of Sir, and clean up the sect for Medicine King Island." Ah! Enai Hanji rolled on the ground, avoiding Yin Shui's sword. She scrambled to crawl towards Wei Su, whose face was as dark as water. "Senior brother Wei Su, senior brother Wei Su, believe me, I didn't kill master, I didn't. It was her. It was Arbor, she wrongly accused me, she harmed me. She used talisman techniques to fake this video." Enai Hanji trembled all over, looking at Arbor, as if she was looking at a ghost. What witchcraft was this? How could she present the events of 2 days ago so clearly in front of everyone? Too terrifying, too terrifying. This woman is simply a monster. It was too terrifying. Enai Hanji's entire body trembled, and she kept shrinking towards Wei Su's side. With her knees curled up, she put on a pitiful appearance and cried out, "Senior brother Wei Su, You'd rather believe an outsider than your own junior sister? Slut. Yin Shui's sword flashed towards Enai Hanji. At this time, you're still pretending to be pitiful. Everyone saw everything clearly in the video just now. You despicable bitch. How dare you deceive everyone on Medicine King Island and make us come here to cause trouble for the Crown Princess. Not only did you kill people and frame them, but you also tried to stir up hatred between the imperial family of the Divine Prefecture and the Medicine King Island. Your intentions are worthy of death. The more Yin Shui spoke, the angrier she became. She wished she could stab Enai Hanji to death on the spot. However, Enai Hanji hid behind Wei Su and was unwilling to come out. With a trembling voice she cried out, "Senior sister Yin Shui, I didn't frame you, nor did I frame the Crown Princess. On the contrary, it was you, the Crown Princess, who relied on your superior power to frame me based on this blurry video. I naturally won't admit it." Emolian sneered. "Why are you still talking nonsense with her? Deal with her. What are you doing?" Yin Shui was like a mad lion, glaring at His Highness the Crown Prince and gripping the hilt of her sword tightly. Chapter 42:20. My Medicine King Island's inferior disciple will naturally be dealt with by my Medicine King Island. No one else needs to interfere. The Crown Prince couldn't help but laugh coldly as he retorted, "I see that you guys are indecisive and don't know how to deal with it. I'll just deal with it on your behalf." "Do it." "Yes." Several black shadows darted out from all directions and grabbed Enai Hanji's arms. In a flash, Enai Hanji was dragged out from behind Wei Su as if she was a chick. Enai Hanji kicked and tried to resist, but her arms were twisted and broken by the Purple Forest guards and thrown in front of the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. With a loud bang, Enai Hanji fell to the ground like a dead dog and desperately shook her legs that were still intact. "What are you doing? Senior brother Wei Su, Senior brother Wei Su, are you just going to watch a few outsiders abuse your junior sister of Medicine King Island?" Yin Shui said with a sullen face. "No matter how incompetent our Medicine King Island is, we don't need others to deal with the slut." Arbor's cold gaze swept over the girl. This green-robed girl had a long face and high cheekbones. From her appearance and tone of voice, one could tell that she was a proud and arrogant person. And in Medicine King Island, she was probably someone with an extremely high status. Wei Su looked at Enai Hanji, who was lying on the ground and twisting her body, and suddenly cupped his hands in Arbor's direction. "Crown Princess, my Medicine King Island was rash in this matter. Senior brother Wei Su?" Enai Hanji was shocked and shouted, unwilling to give up. "You actually believe outsiders and not me? Slut, shut up." Yin Shui reprimanded angrily. "Do you think that everyone else is a fool? Don't tell me that no one has eyes to see such an obvious image? You said that the Crown Princess of China slandered you and made a fake image. Then why does it look so real? Could it be that she can even simulate the clothes you wore that day and the furnishings in the room?" When everyone heard her words, they couldn't help but understand. That was indeed the case. The furnishings in the image just now were obviously real. Moreover, the clothes on their bodies and various other details were also rather realistic. It clearly didn't seem to be fabricated with talismans. Thinking of the words time reversal that the Crown Princess had mentioned before, the people of Medicine King Island, although they did not know what it was, all of them secretly remembered it and planned to check the ancient books later to see if there was any record of it. Wei Su took out a jade box and presented it to the young Crown Princess with both hands. "This is a small token of my apology." Arbor glanced at him and took it without saying anything. She liked people who were straightforward and could admit their mistakes. That was a good character. What he hated the most was the kind of person who couldn't help but put up a last-ditch struggle, even when the truth had already been exposed. Enai Hanji was one such example. She didn't open the box in front of everyone and directly put the jade box into her inner world. Then she turned around and glanced at Enai Hanji. Wei Su continued, "Crown Princess, this one has a presumptuous request. Please use a dictum talisman on her. I want to know what Sir Hewen was arguing about with her before he died." Arbor had the same intention. Previously, It was Wei Su and the others who stopped her from using it. Now it was their own people from Medicine King Island who requested to use the dictum talisman. That was great. However, Anai Hanji trembled all over and screamed. She glared at Wei Su and said sharply, "Senior brother Wei Su, is this how you protect your junior sister?" Wei Su looked at Anai Hanji coldly. "You only have yourself to blame for deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors. Now I just want to know the truth." Chapter 42-21. Senior brother Wei Su. Anai Hanji gritted her teeth and hatefully said, "Even you were deceived by this woman?" Wei Su directly turned his face to the side, not wanting to say another word to her. Wei Su had nothing to say to this kind of person who had been caught red-handed, but was still trying to argue his way out of it. A purple forest guard pulled her up on her knees, and Arbor flicked a dictum talisman toward her, its talisman energy instantly tunneling into her glabella. The jade talisman returned to the young crown princess's hand, and Anai Hanji, who was kneeling on the ground with downcast eyes, was already under the dictum talisman's control. Wei Su coldly asked, "Anai Hanji, why did you kill your master?" Anai Hanji abruptly looked up, her face contorted, and she abruptly said, "He asked for it. He only knows how to say that I'm wrong all day long. I'm his true disciple." Anai Hanji angrily roared. "He always nags me about my willfulness and recklessness, saying that I should restrain my temper. Why should I restrain myself for someone else? What does that crown princess have to be so smug about?" Anai Hanji's face contorted. She boasted that she could refine the resurrection pill, but in the end, she couldn't even save her own master. Moreover, if it weren't for my master telling her the resurrection pill's prescription, I think she would have been completely helpless. What's so great about her? She says she's invincible, but it's extremely difficult to do it. Since she's always so arrogant, I'll add a few strokes to the original Bodhi Revival Herb's medicinal diagram, so that she'll never be able to find the real Bodhi Revival Herb in this lifetime. She won't be able to save her master. The young crown princess's gaze instantly dropped below freezing. Those two pitch-black pools seemed to be filled with poison, so dark that one couldn't see the end of them. The resurrection pill's leaves are needle-shaped, and will never bloom nor bear fruit. She originally thought that His Excellency He Wen's medicinal knowledge was poor and incorrectly drew the resurrection pill. But it turned out that this damn woman tampered with it. If she didn't know the truth, if she didn't have Planet Forest, and obtained the revival Bodhi grass long ago, wouldn't she really be like this wretched woman said? Wouldn't she be unable to obtain the real revival Bodhi grass, and save Morong Sun in this lifetime? Morong Sun was already so pitiful. She was already dead, so why did she have to feel sorry for her? Why couldn't he come straight to her? Why did she want to implicate her master? The little crown princess felt suffocated and uncomfortable. She pulled out the vine whip from her sleeve with a sullen face. The barbed vine whip landed on Anai Hanji's face. Ugly face, even more vicious heart. However, Anai Hanji acted as if she didn't feel anything and continued to talk nonstop. Whose master is he? Who was her heart leaning towards? When he found out about the revival Bodhi grass, he actually turned around and left, saying that he was going to ask for forgiveness from the crown princess. He also said that he would take my cultivation and expel me from Medicine King Island, and that he would never recognize me as his disciple again. Anai Hanji's face turned cold and vicious as she spoke. Do I, Anai Hanji, still want to live? Do I want to live well? If I'm expelled from Medicine King Island by him, what future do I have? What future do I have to talk about? What did I do wrong? I'm only struggling for my life to survive. If I don't kill him, he'll cripple my cultivation and expel me from Medicine King Island. How can I, Anai Hanji, live a lowly life like a normal person? That kind of lowly person whose life is worthless isn't even worthy to carry my shoes. Everyone was stupefied as they watched her hooting while kneeling there with a bloody face. Chapter 42-22. The current Anai Hanji had a bloody whip mark on her face. It was not pretty at all. The onlookers truly felt that the young crown princess was right. Her face was ugly, but her heart was even uglier. Wei Su turned around and bowed to the young Crown Prince Consort. Apologies, Your Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Prince Consort. It was our first impression that caused you trouble. My Medicine King Island was in the wrong first. I, Wei Su, am willing to accept the punishment of 3 lashes. After speaking, he looked at Yin Shui, who was standing stiffly at the side. Young Island Lord. Beat. Wei Su removed his outer robe and said coldly with his back facing the crowd. Yin Shui bit her lips and removed the whip from her waist. Her hands were as fast as lightning, and she lashed out 3 times with great accuracy. 3 bright bloody scars appeared on Wei Su's back. Arbor's eyes moved slightly. Seeing him so straightforward, he did not say anything. Yin Shui went forward to pass him the medicine, but Wei Su only put on his outer robe calmly. He turned to Prince Emo and cupped his hands. Your Highness, Crown Princess, Enai Hanji has committed a grave mistake. I will personally escort her back to Medicine King Island to receive the most destructive heavenly punishment. Oh, you want to take her away? Emo Lien glanced at the other party noncommittally. The heavenly punishment of Medicine King Island was to cripple a person's cultivation, cut off their legs, and make them into a medicine man like a stick. Emo Lien had heard of this punishment before. It was famous for being as cruel as being branded by a cannon. Enai Hanji had already regained her senses. Hearing Wei Su's words, she was so frightened that she trembled continuously. The heavenly punishment of Medicine King Island was so horrifying. How could she go through it? Wei Su, you dare to do this to me? Have you forgotten how much my master has contributed to Medicine King Island all these years? It's precisely because Sir Hewen is a highly respected person on the island of the Medicine King. Yet he was killed by a treacherous villain like you. Wei Su said coldly. Shouldn't a vicious woman like you be sentenced to death? Cripple her cultivation before taking her away. Wei Su said coldly with a decisive expression. Yin Shui had long disliked her. If it wasn't for this woman making a mistake and picking Medicine King Island to cause trouble in the Imperial Palace, how could Senior Marshal Brother be put on the spot and receive 3 lashes as punishment in order to make up for his mistake? Medicine King Island had countless ways to destroy a person's cultivation. Yin Shui took out a bottle of medicine from her inner world and directly poured it into Enai Hanji's mouth. Enai Hanji struggled with all her might, whimpering and whimpering. It was nothing more than her noble status, that she was already a heaven-grade alchemist and so on. Yin Shui hated her for being ruthless. How could she show mercy to her? In just a moment, he poured the entire bottle of medicine into Enai Hanji's mouth, before turning around to look at Wei Su. Wei Su turned to face the Crown Prince and the young Crown Princess and said in a low voice, I will be taking Enai Hanji away. Please do not stop me. Don't worry, Medicine King Island will definitely not tolerate such a treacherous person who killed her master. Arbor looked deeply at this Master Wei and nodded with an indifferent expression. Since it is a family matter of Medicine King Island, it is naturally inconvenient for us to interfere. Master Wei can do as he pleases. Wei Su nodded and bowed to the young Crown Princess. Many thanks. Then, he had someone drag Enai Hanji away like a dead dog and led the disciples of Medicine King Island away quickly. Emo Lien's gaze landed on his stiff back. An interesting person. Your Highness, the Dragon Clan's envoy has entered the city. Chapter 42-23. Arbor couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Her meaning was clear. The Dragon Clan had probably already left before the message was sent, right? That was why they could come so quickly. Who are you? Xiaomu was a bit curious. The merfolk she had seen before were at most side branches like Granny Long, or ordinary merfolk commoners. She had never seen a proper member of the Dragon Clan. The Purple Forest Guard who came to report bowed. Reporting to the Crown Princess, the visitor is said to be the Dragon Clan's young master, Long Qian. Master Jojo was surprised. Oh, the Dragon Clan had spent a fortune to invite her? It seemed that they were very curious about her. Go and invite my big brother here. Yes. The Purple Forest Guard obeyed and left. Arbor looked up at her husband, who was deep in thought. You think it's strange too, don't you? He's suddenly so attentive to me, as if I'm so important. As the little fellow spoke, She couldn't help but snicker. He clearly didn't care about her at all before, and had left her to fend for herself for a long time. Now that he was suddenly so attentive, she was really not used to it. It made her hair stand on end. Emolien frowned unhappily. He reached out and pulled her into his arms, rubbing her little face. "You're not allowed to talk about yourself in such a nonchalant tone. You're very important, very important. You're my Jojo. The most important Jojo." Emolien lowered his head and bit her lips as a punishment. The little fellow twisted her little head and squirmed in his arms. "Let my big brother receive that person. I don't want to see them today." "Okay." Emolien nodded and smiled. "Then we'll follow our original plan and go to Half Moon Cliff to soak in the hot spring. Why don't we stay there tonight? Come back after dinner tomorrow?" Emolien said with a smile. "The mushrooms on Half Moon Cliff taste pretty good." Arbor's eyes lit up. "Sure." After the two of them finished their discussion, they held hands and ran to Half Moon Cliff to enjoy the scenery. They sent a message to the miserable Mu Xingqian, asking him to go and receive Long Huan. Being abandoned by the irresponsible couple, Big Brother felt rather helpless, but he could only bear the burden without complaint. The place where Long Huan stayed was the largest guest house in the capital city. By the time Mu Xingqian received the message and rushed over, he was already a step too late. When they arrived at the entrance, they were informed that the Dragon Clan's people had been arranged to check in an hour ago. Mu Xingqian was led by the person in charge of the guest house through corridors and bridges, all the way to the Chuihua Garden, where the Dragon Clan lived. The person in charge laughed bitterly and said, "There are more than 30 people in this group. There was a girl with a fiery temper." Just now, outside the guest house, there was a guard who took a few more glances at that person before he raised his whip and whipped him. His strength is not ordinary. That person seemed to have thought of the little girl's ferocity when she slapped him. He couldn't help but shudder and shake his head. "This official won't accompany young Master Muin." Mu Xingqian nodded and walked into Chuihua Garden. "Who are you?" Just as he reached the entrance, he was stopped by two vigilant men in long, diagonal robes. "I'm Mu Xingqian." Mu Xingqian reported his name in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. The gatekeeper naturally knew the purpose of this trip since he could follow his master, Long Huan, to the sovereign capital. He naturally knew what kind of people Arbor and Mu Xingqian were. Chapter 42-24. One of them cupped his fists politely at Mu Xingqian. "Please wait for a moment." Then he hurriedly went in to report. Mu Xingqian didn't mind and waited outside the door. His expression was calm, and he didn't feel awkward about being left outside. Not long after, he heard footsteps. Mu Xingqian raised his head to look. With a glance, he saw a graceful young lady wearing a rainbow-colored cloak. She was surrounded by a few people as she walked over. The girl walked to the entrance of Chuihua Garden and sized Mu Xingqian up. Her expression revealed faint displeasure. "Why are you alone?" Mu Xingqian raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, "Am I being despised?" Seeing that he didn't say anything, the girl was clearly unhappy. "Why didn't Aunt's daughter come to welcome you?" Mu Xingqian lost interest in conversing with her when he saw that she was rather rude. His handsome face darkened as he said indifferently, "The crown princess isn't in the capital today." The girl frowned, as if she was trying her best to suppress her rising anger. "Then why are you here?" Mu Xingqian cupped his fists with an indifferent expression. "This one was rude. I didn't know that the Dragon Clan's threshold was so high. Farewell." The girl's eyes flashed with anger, and her left hand subconsciously reached for the golden whip hanging at her waist. Suddenly, a mellow and deep voice sounded from behind. "Shangyun, don't mess around." Long Shangyun awkwardly curled her fingers and slowly lowered her hand, glaring fiercely at Mu Xingqian. When she turned around, her arrogant and despotic expression from before was suddenly swept away. She flew to the person's side and leaned over like a little bird, calling out sweetly, "Big brother." Mu Xingqian felt his hair stand on end. The person who came was a tall and handsome young man. He wore a slanted golden robe, which was slightly different from the people of the 3 provinces. His long hair was held in place with a purple wooden hairpin, and the remaining part of his hair hung down to his waist. He looked gentle and easy to get along with, but the aura of a superior couldn't be concealed. This one is Long Huan. The man in front of him followed the etiquette of the 3 provinces and cupped his fists at Mu Xingchen. He smiled and said, "My sister was rude just now." Mu Xingchen nodded indifferently and reported his name again. Mu Xingchen. Because Long Shangyun gave him a very bad impression, Mu Xingchen was too lazy to be nice to her. He simply said, "The Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince left the city today and will only return tomorrow. Please wait in the hotel." Long Qi was stunned for a moment before nodding with a smile. "All right, big brother." Long Shangyun stomped her feet in dissatisfaction as a faint trace of anger flashed in her eyes. "We don't have much time, Sister Shui Yuan." Shi Longhuan glanced at her. Long Shangyun pouted and shut her mouth unhappily. Mu Xingchen cupped his hands. "I've delivered the message. Goodbye. Cousin, please wait." Long Qi hurriedly called out to Mu Xingchen. Mu Xingchen looked back indifferently and non-committally glanced at Long Huan. "Is there anything else, young Master Long?" Long Huan saw his cold expression and knew that Mu Xingchen must have developed a bad impression of Long Shangyun. He hurriedly smoothed things over. "Cousin is older than me by 2 years. There's no need to be so distant. Call me young master. Just call me a Huan." "I don't dare." Mu Xingchen coldly rejected. "The Long family's threshold is too high. Xingchen can't afford it." A trace of awkwardness appeared on Long Huan's face. Chapter 42-25. On the other hand, Long Shangyun stomped her feet in anger and scolded. "You're so untactful. You're really shameless." Long Huan turned around and glared at Long Shangyun. "Shut up." Long Shangyun pursed her lips and stomped her feet. She huffed and shouted, "Brother, why are you purposely trying to curry favor with this person? With her brother's status, why did he have to compromise so much? In their sea of forgetfulness, in such a large sea area, who would dare to disobey Big Brother's orders?" This Mu Xingchen was merely a youth from a talisman aristocratic family. He was just slightly more talented than the average person, but in their sea of forgetfulness, he was nothing. The tiny China was not even 1/3 the size of forgetfulness. A young master from a small aristocratic family in China actually dared to be so unsmiling and sarcastic to the noble prince and princess of the Long royal family. He was simply audacious. Mu Xingchen really did not know that the family his mother had risked her life to protect back then was actually this kind of family. Why? No wonder his sister was resentful and did not want to see them at all. So this maternal family was really such a weird breed. If the entire Long family was like this, Mu Xingchen felt that Jojo was right not to see them. If the person standing here today was Jojo, with Jojo's personality, this girl would probably be slapped. If you don't know how to speak properly, don't say it. This is China, not your forgetfulness. Who are you acting all high and mighty for? In any case, Mu Xingchen would not fall for it. With Long Shangyun's ruckus, the atmosphere became even more awkward. Long Huan felt a little apologetic. It was his first time meeting his aunt, Long Chuyun's son, and he actually made such a fuss. This was really a little inexcusable. However, he also understood Shangyun's temper. She had a child's temperament, and her temper came and went quickly. If Mu Xingchen was willing to go along with this little girl and say a few words, everything would probably be fine. However, looking at his cousin's expression, it was obvious that he already detested the siblings. When he thought about how he had already offended his cousin, before even meeting the main character of this trip, Long Huan felt a slight headache. "Cousin, Shangyun is only 16 years old. She is young and inexperienced. If she has offended you in any way, please forgive her." Mu Xingchen glanced at him with a faint smile and said indifferently, "I wouldn't dare." Then, he cupped his hands towards Long Qing and said, "I won't disturb your rest. I'll take my leave first." Just as he turned around, he heard a delicate reprimand. "How dare you?" The shadow of the whip swung against the wind. Mu Xingchen stretched out his hand and grabbed the end of the whip, making it taut. Although this sneak attack failed, Mu Xingchen's palm was cut by some of the hidden barbs at the tip of the whip. Long Yan was shocked. "Xiang Yun, stop it now." Mu Xingqian's eyes instantly turned extremely cold. He stared at Long Xiangyun so coldly that the latter couldn't help but tremble slightly. Long Huan leaped forward and patted Long Xiangyun's shoulder. Still not retracting your hand? However, how could Long Xiangyun be willing to withdraw her hand? This whip of hers was made from the tendons of a 500-year-old, suspending sea serpent. It was indestructible and unbreakable. It was a rare 15th-grade spirit artifact. Naturally, she wouldn't easily let go of it and throw it into the hands of others. However, in the next second, Long Xiangyun discovered that her golden whip had turned into pieces under the other party's palm. Mu Xingqian mercilessly threw the fragments of the whip in his hand onto the ground. Chapter 42-26. The next day, Lady Qiao Qiao came over and played at Half Moon Cliff's splendid mountain villa for a day. She ate well and lived very comfortably, and only returned to the city with her husband in the evening. After receiving the news, the couple immediately returned to the Mu residence to visit Mu Xingqian. Mu Xingqian didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw his sister's tense expression. "I'm really fine. It was just a minor injury yesterday. I've already taken medicine. Look, can't you see the wound at all?" Mu Xingqian raised his left hand and flipped it in front of the little girl to let her take a look. Jojo still doesn't know the effects of the medicine she made. The little girl's expression darkened. Young Master Mu's heart pounded as he watched. He felt that his sister's little face was acting out a drama that foreshadowed a storm. Aoyi. Aoyi is here. The little girl blinked and looked at a certain someone who suddenly stuck his head out of the window. She said expressionlessly, "Take some men to the guest house and chase the Dragon Clan people out of the city. Tell them to scram. Scram back to where they came from. This crown princess doesn't want to see anyone." Mu Xingqian was dumbfounded. Aoyi was also dumbfounded. He subconsciously glanced at his master. The crown prince glanced at him. Aoyi immediately quivered and nodded. "Yes, I'll do it right away." What a joke. How could anyone who offended their crown princess end up well? With the young crown prince consort's personality, she would still chase them away regardless of whether or not they were from her maternal family. Mu Xingqian quickly advised, "Jojo, big brother didn't suffer any grievances. It's just a small matter." Arbor shook his head and looked at his husband. Emolien patted his head and said in a low voice, "Big brother, these people seem to be here for Jojo. They detained the state preceptor and wanted Jojo to meet them. Now that they've personally invited him, they want Jojo to go to the sea again and again. Isn't that strange?" Mu Xingqian was taken aback. He thought about it again and nodded hesitantly. Could it be that they have something to ask of Jojo? Emolien nodded. "That's right. I haven't seen them take you and your sister seriously for the past 10 years. When the Dragon Clan members saw you this time, they immediately asked about Jojo. Isn't that obvious enough?" Mu Xingqian's expression darkened. Could they be plotting something? Damn it. Back then, wasn't it enough for them to make their mother leave her hometown and marry her to the imperial capital? Now he even wanted to scheme against his own sister? Why? I don't know what they're after yet, Emolien said calmly. But the Dragon Clan's attitude is indeed very strange. Anyway, Jojo had been suspicious of them from the start. In this world, there was no such thing as gratuitous flattery. They must have thought that Jojo had something to gain from him. Mu Xingqian was so angry that he slammed the table. These people from the Dragon Clan have gone too far. Arbor raised her hand nonchalantly and said calmly, "That's how the human heart is." They hadn't seen each other for so many years. How much affection could they have for each other? Arbor didn't believe it. People could only develop feelings for each other after interacting with each other. This saying was true. Nephew and niece. They hadn't seen each other for more than 10 years. Now they were suddenly trying to please her because of blood ties? Haha, did they think she was a naive teenager? Chapter 42-27. Mu Xingqian looked at his sister's cold eyes and felt a little uncomfortable. He knew that if Jojo had not been through so much, she might have been a soft and innocent little girl right now. Perhaps he would end up like Long Xiangyun, being spoiled by his family to the point of being whipped if things didn't go his way. He did not know if such an experience was good or bad for Jojo. It was just that, in his bitterness, he felt that it was not easy to have such a sister. Mu Xingchen raised his hand and patted his sister's fluffy little head. He said in a low voice, "If you don't want to see him, then don't. I will support you unconditionally." Arbor's eyes flickered. She rubbed her little head and said softly, "I won't cause trouble for you, big brother." Mu Xingchen could not help but laugh. Big brother is not afraid of trouble. Mo Lian smiled faintly. He looked at his wifey before looking at the man sitting on the side, who was smiling brightly like the moon in the clear sky. He did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that his brother-in-law was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. On the other hand, in the guest house, it was a real mess. Aoyi was a man of action. After receiving the crown prince's order, he immediately brought a group of friends from the night pavilion to do something. In order to successfully drive the people out, Aoyi specially found a few dark court guards who were above the godly state to help. As expected, he had predicted correctly. The moment he relayed the young crown prince consort's intentions, the members of the Long clan actually exploded. "Damn! Why didn't you get angry when you hit the crown princess brother without any hesitation? Why didn't you say that you were from the crown princess family? Don't worry about them. If they don't obey, tie them up and throw them out of the city." Aoyi waved his hand and gave the order to the row of youths behind him. "Drive the dragon clan out of the city." Yes, the two sides were about to fight. The people from the dragon clan naturally did not want to be thrown out in such a humiliating way. They had to fight, but Aoyi was a jerk. He knew that the situation was a little dangerous. In order to ensure that the mission was completed, he brought more than 1,000 purple forest guards to help. A dozen of them could beat a dragon clan guard to the point of vomiting blood. Now there were more than 10 of them surrounding one person. The dragon clan was in a tragic state. By the time Long Huan realized that the situation was not right, the entire guest house was already in a mess. Long Qing had no choice but to fly up into the air and say coldly, "Everyone, please stop. Everyone. I have a keepsake from Aunt Chuyin here. Aunt Chuyin once said that year, as long as you have the token, you can ask her descendants to do something for you." Stay Up Late waved his hand. "Fight." Everyone pretended not to see anything and fought even more fiercely. The few people in charge of the hotel twitched their mouths and squatted in the corner with their hands on their heads. How would they dare to stop the fight? Long Huan immediately became angry. "Aunt Chuyin has passed away for many years. Don't tell me you still want to ruin her reputation?" Stay Up Late gritted his teeth in anger. This kid is really something. She actually held a token and wanted to threaten their crown prince consort into submission? It was not that he wanted to criticize this brat, but with the crown princess's personality, seeing how arrogant he was, it was very likely that she would directly kill him and take away the token. "Fight." Stay Up Late raised his hand and said angrily. He had followed the little crown princess for so many years. How could he not know what kind of person the little crown princess was? Chapter 42-28. She hated people who were coerced the most. The little crown princess would not blame them even if they killed the entire dragon clan today. Long Huan was anxious when he saw that Aoyi and the others were stubborn. He saw that a few dragon clan members were injured, and even more were tied up. His sister Long Shangyun had also suffered a few times. Her arm had almost been injured. Long Huan's expression darkened. He quickly grabbed the jade pendant and squeezed it lightly. A figure suddenly floated into the air. "Child, is this my child?" The woman in the silhouette had clear and gentle features. Her almond-shaped eyes seemed to scan the surroundings with great vigor. Aoyi hurriedly called for everyone to stop. He looked at Long Huan in shock. Long Huan immediately recalled the woman in the figure. He sighed in relief and said with a cold expression, "Go invite your master. If she wants to see Aunt again, tell her to come see me personally." Aoyi glared at Long Huan coldly. Then he turned and left without a word. "You will regret this. Long Huan. Brother." Long Shangyun cried as she threw herself into Long Huan's arms. She touched the non-existent wound on the back of her hand and pouted. Brother, these people are too unreasonable. We shouldn't have come to find her. We should have told her to come to the river of forgetfulness. Would she dare not come? The miniature of her mother's life lantern before she died is in our hands. Shut up. Long Qian glared at his sister angrily and pushed her away in annoyance. Shang Yun, when will you be more sensible? Can you not cause trouble for the family all the time? This matter could have not developed like this. If Xiang Yin had not attacked Mu Xingqian unexpectedly and angered the young crown prince consort, she would have been dead already. Why would the little crown princess send people to chase them away? Why would he do such a lowly thing and use the miniature of his aunt's life lantern to threaten the little crown princess? One wrong step would lead to many more mistakes. Didn't he know that his actions would make the little crown princess hate him even more? Although he had never met this little crown princess before, the dragon family had known about the siblings' movements for a long time. They knew Mu Xingqian and Arbor's personalities like the back of their hand. The young crown prince consort wasn't someone who was willing to suffer a loss from beginning to end. Just by looking at her actions today, one could tell what kind of person she was. Trouble. Long Shangyun, however, didn't know that she had caused trouble. She widened her teary eyes and looked at Long Yen with grievance. Big brother, you actually pushed me? You're scolding me for an outsider. Surround this place. No matter if it's a human or a bird, I'll make it impossible for them to escape. A cold voice came from afar. Fast, it came too fast. Two silhouettes descended from the back of the blue bird as it flapped its wings. Long Shangyun's astonished gaze landed on the white-clothed young man. Before she could recover from her shock, she saw an emerald green vine sweeping towards her arm. Have mercy! Long Huan cried out in alarm. However, the vine whip still landed heavily on Long Shangyun's arm. Before she could finish her scream, she suddenly felt her body become light as a vine whip coiled around her neck and pulled her over. Long Huan's pupils contracted. He saw a beautiful woman dressed in blood-red clothes, standing beside a man in snow-white clothes. 5 fingers as white as jade were strangling his sister Long Shangyun's neck. The miniature of the life lantern in exchange for your sister's dog life. Exchange? You're not exchanging? Chapter 42-29. Long Shangyun could only turn her head slightly to look at Arbor, with her neck being choked. After a while she gritted her teeth and said, You actually, shut up. Xiaomu bluntly raised her hand and heavily smacked the top of her head. If you spout another word of nonsense, I'll cut off your tongue. Truly, only Xiaomu could rein in Long Shangyun, this kind of domineering character. After being yelled at like this by Sir Jojo, Miss Long was instantly terrified. Although he wished he could take a bite out of it and drink it, his life was still in the hands of others. He finally recognized the reality and obediently shut his mouth that was full of nonsense. Arbor looked in Long Huan's direction and said impatiently, How about it? Do you still need to consider? If she had only disliked the Long family before, then now, it could be said that Arbor had no good feelings towards them at all. When she heard Aoye's report that Long Huan had used her mother's soul miniature to threaten her, Arbor felt anger rush to her head. If it wasn't for her remaining rationality telling her that the two people in front of her were very likely her cousins, perhaps the moment they met, she would have reached out with her sharp claws to tear apart this talkative woman in front of her. These despicable fellows did not dare to attack her in the open. Instead, they schemed in the dark time and again. They were cold and vicious. If they had any respect for Long Chuyin in their hearts, they wouldn't have used her life lantern miniature to threaten her today. When she thought of this, Arbor's remaining so-called bloodline was completely burned away by the anger in her heart. She tightened her grip on Long Shangyun's neck. Even from a certain distance away, she could hear the soft cracking of his sister's neck bone, which made his heart jump. No. Long Huan hurriedly reached out a hand and tried to steady her breathing and emotions. She shouted, Cousin, please stop. My patience is very limited. Xiaomu's beautiful, bone-chilling eyes emitted a chilly glint. Throw the life lantern miniature over. Don't play any tricks on me. Otherwise, I'll strangle your sister to death right now, extract her soul, and make her into a mechanical puppet. I'll make her guard my mother's memorial tablet for all eternity, and kowtow an apology. She felt a chill in his heart. Long Shengyun broke out in a cold sweat, as a rare trace of fear appeared in her eyes. Long Huan cupped his fists towards Arbor and bowed. Cousin, we don't mean any harm. Just now, it was only because I wanted to see you, that I made such a decision in a moment of desperation. I wasn't being disrespectful to Aunt. Shut up. Xiaomu bellowed. Who wants to listen to your nonsense? Do you think you have the right to bargain with me now? What a joke. Long Shengyun's mouth was slightly agape in shock. She felt as if the 5 iron-like fingers of the small hand around her neck were deeply embedded into her flesh. Emo Lien saw that his wife had lost control of her emotions, and was both anxious and angry. He stared at Long Huan with a gaze so cold that it was as if snow was about to seep out. Kill dash, he only spat out 2 words. A panicked scream interrupted him. No, 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 no. I'll give you the token. Long Huan didn't dare to say anything else. He hurriedly reached out, and threw the token, that looked like a round jade pendant towards Arbor. Emo Lien raised his hand, and caught the jade pendant. His cold eyes glanced towards Long Huan. The latter only felt that the cold light was sharp and threatening. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.